Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter, and our guest for this one is going to be Ash, who is the head coach of GamerLegion. Right, I will actually say at the beginning of the episode, just for people who forget, because I feel like a lot of people in their brain, if they don't follow Tier 2 or the tournaments where GamerLegion has attended, they actually really do think that it was just that lineup from like Blast Paris, or maybe they remember when Snacks was on the team. It's like, guys, they've been going since till then. In fact, even when they had Snacks in the team, actually, the team already was a different lineup. It was the one with Slend and Andu and these like up and coming players. I have to say, Ash, actually, for people who don't know, those are two of the players where actually I was told by loads of people who were like other coaches at your level in the scene are actually like considered like sleeper, like breakout talents. Like a lot of people actually want the Slend guy and think Andu's like an underrated player and stuff. So can you give us like some basic thoughts? If people haven't kept up on GamerLegion since the big glory days of Blast Paris, what's the last few months without Snacks been like?
It was hard getting an in-game leader in again. To be honest, it's been frustrating to keep going backwards and forwards, up and down all the time. Players been leaving every opportunity nearly. It's been difficult, but we've been grinding it out, building up again, and we've just tried to do it the same way we did for Paris, right? Which was just build up the ranks, make sure you're practicing good enough, and then go to the majors hopefully when you get there and try and show yourselves there. So it's really frustrating to go back up and down, but hopefully now we've kind of landed on something a bit more consistent.
Okay. We always let the guest. Yeah, go on.
Well, I'm just curious. Yeah, you've been with them for such a long time. Like you seem like you're pretty much the only consistent piece since 2020. So why? I'm just kind of curious. Like, why are you so deeply entrenched with GL with GamerLegion?
It's kind of just how my career's kind of gone. To be honest, I think it's not really like I've been approached by lots of teams or anything either. Right. It's kind of been that I just kind of focus on one day at a time, build the best team possible, stick at it, and I don't even really think about it. And to be honest, when the other day I saw it's been 4 years, I thought, wow, I thought he'd only been like 3 or something. I had no idea, so just get on with it.
To be fair, coach also a bit like IGL, if you look, isn't it a role that tends to move between teams? People stay put and then they build around themselves. Not least because since there's no objective metric or stat for us to figure out how good they are. It's basically all word of mouth. It's why it's actually funny when you hear people complain like, they already hired this coach off Reddit now. It's like, what else would they have to go off? Like, there's that and then what players say you're good or not. That's about it. Like, beyond that, we're all guessing. You just have to like, I mean, even when they do that thing, spoiler, this is a quick point. I'll just make this point. There's no way you can do your due diligence for a coach, guys. Like, if people don't know, think about the news we were going to talk about today with cadiaN, right? I can tell you when they made that super team, they tried to do their due diligence. Went and asked all the people who've been in teams, like, what do you think he's like? Or what does he work? And what's his system? And they all just gave the glory report. And at the end, if the glory report's there and the results are there, you sign the guy. And then what happens is you find out later if there's any problems. So, no, that doesn't surprise me. I actually don't think that's even any sort of a diss. I just feel like in the scene for coaches, I don't even know if people could name more than 10 coaches. Let's put it that way, like, without like a screen up that had them on, if you know what I mean. So, Ash, what is the first point? What is your good point that we're going to start with here?
I think I want to talk about the impact that academies have had on the scene recently, and I think that people aren't really maybe giving as much credit as should be doing, especially to MOUZ Sports and Spirit Academy. And just so people know as well, that the team we have now, all 5 players at some point have been on an academy.
Oh, right. Have you actually intentionally scouted from them?
Not intentionally, no, but I think there's actually I see positives now kind of happening from this from the academies. So first off, the guys in my academy, they've been in the academy at some point. Andu's been in our own academy, which we just started.
Okay.
Volt was in Fnatic Academy, Slend was in MOUZ NXT, ZTR was in Young Ninjas, and Flamus was in Spirit Academy. So what I'm kind of seeing now is a professional environment that I never would have thought would have been possible. And actually, I would say maturity-wise, this is probably the most mature team I've ever really coached. And the average age of the team is like 20.5 or something years, which is kind of ridiculous.
Do you put some of that down to the academy? Is that like essentially is the idea, like what I actually think a lot of people dream of if this was to be like a sport? It's the idea that you don't just learn like the game when you come up through the academy. You learn things like being a professional. Is that what you're sort of implying?
Oh yeah, 100%. That's the kind of the main thing to me, to be honest, because I see that they're so open now to talking about feelings. They're so understanding about the mental side, and they really want to talk about it. They're getting more involved with media, which I think they're seeing desperate for. Right in the future of this game is kind of we need this sort of thing involved. They understand that what coaches are doing, they're asking for help. And I think kind of what I've seen as like a byproduct of this is the younger guys with the star positions, they don't really have this star mentality as much anymore, where they're a bit insufferable as teammates, where everything's on them and they're difficult to work with and the tilting. I think this has kind of been phased out a bit, and this is coming from grabbing hold of young guys. It's like there's levels academies below the academies now as well, like the 14, 15-year-olds. And they're putting in people there who know what they're talking about. They're showing kind of like, here's a coach, here's what it's to be professional, this is how to work hard, and all these other things. And it's sticking with these guys a lot, and it's actually making them now play with people that kind of around their similar sort of professionalism, rather than playing with randoms. You know, back when I was playing, it was just that you pick some players that you kind of know are kind of good, and they could be like the biggest wrong uns you've ever seen in your lives, right? The bit druggies all the time, the racist, there's something wrong with them horribly. And obviously, as human nature, you're going to pick up on something, right? Sure. And now it's kind of like, they're just really good professionals that are easy to work with. And I've been shocked by it all, to be honest. And I think that there's so many positives that come from this as well, because the transfer market is completely out of control for everyone. I think that anyone that's over 1 rated now, it doesn't matter who they're playing against, you're looking at 6 figures almost all the time. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And for the reason I want to call out MOUZ Sports and Spirit in particular is they are bypassing all of this. They've created an academy now which could almost run as itself, its own entity, and be profitable with the money they're making, and the fact that they have both of them have a top 5 lineup with players that are stacked from their own academy, which they're not even seeing like direct profit from them, right? It's just they're bringing the sponsors, they're building a top team, and they're not even paying the buyouts, they're not paying huge salaries. They're getting every possible bonus from this as well. And if I look even deeper into it, I think of MOUZ Sports Academy. I think of 4 players right now from the academy in the main team. They sold 2 recently to OG. There's this Nachu kid, this Apex and Zai we were commending, saying, he's going to be the next big thing. Slem's on our team. TSM bought Syrah the other day. JDC's on Big, and there's a kid called PR as well, who I think potentially could even be the best of all of them. And then on Spirit, obviously, Zontix, Donk, Artfrost, Magnajez, Patsy, Siren, Chiron, Flammus, and this new kid Kiyosuke or something everyone's raving about as well. It's like they're just churning them, and it's the same even with Na'Vi now. They're picking it up. And I was actually thinking the other day, if I was to build like a dream team for like the next 5 years, a team that wants to win now and win in 5 years, I would comfortably put players like Zershan, Shui, Jimfat, Donks, people like these who would win. Not only would they be in 5 years' time probably the best players in the world, right now they're almost already there. So I think that this is kind of, it's not even just this as well. I see like levels of this, because it's not even just their own benefit. It's the players that are being let go who are just, they're like put on the right path, and they go, okay, right, guys, you're not going to stay with us now. We're going to let you go. We go to other teams, and they know how to be a pro. They know how much time to put in, how to get better, and they're starting off as professionals. And other people are learning from them as well. And it doesn't really matter what talent they have anymore. They can do it. And I think I was on a team with Mezzi for years and years and years and years, back when I was playing and when I was coaching. And I never really thought of Mezzi as like a super talent at any point. He's just a guy that he would always learn from his mistakes. He's always got.
I heard he was really diligent and he was like studying all the shit, right?
Oh, he's unbelievable. Like, he sticks to it so hard as well, and he's so professional. And he's this kind of guy that no teammate would ever want to kick him. And it's not just because he's a nice guy. It's because you can see he's working, he's learning all the time. He knows all the protocols. He listens to everything you say. And he's kind of the perfect example of a guy who I don't think had the most talent, who was just in a top 5 team, could be a top 20 player, no problem if he played the roles and he was asked of him, and he's playing in-game leader. He's played AWPer at one point. It's kind of ridiculous, right? This is just from the mentality side. And now it feels like this is what's been churned out, and it's because of these academies. And I actually remember something the other day, we're talking on Team Spirit with Flammus, who's a Russian player, and we're talking about Zoma or Eczema, or whatever you want to call him.
The coach guy that everyone's flaming, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and he genuinely, like, he absolutely loves VP to bits, and he genuinely could not believe that anyone would speak to a coach like that, because this is how he's been brought up in Spirit Academy.
Right.
The coach is here to help you. He's going to do everything he can. He's using experience, and he could not believe it. And this is kind of proof of the.
Oh, by the way, the reason that's mega is because he's Russian, mate. Like, they have a notorious scene of people flaming each other. Like, yeah, you would expect like the opposite. That's actually very impressive that like a young guy sort of gets it. Yeah. Yeah,
and it seems to be, honestly, it seems to be all of them. There's times I'm talking with them, and I'm like, Jesus, you feel like I'm talking 26, 27-year-olds. Yeah. And for these main teams as well, they can see what players they have in front of them. They're not taking any risks. They know when these players are coming up. They know exactly what Shui, Zershan, Jimfat, all these other guys, they know what they're getting because they're in their academies as well. There's so many bonuses, but they are making... The thing I kind of want to point the most out is they are making something profitable in esports by churning these players out, and they're making... If they wanted to just sell all the players now, they'd both be making millions just by everything they've made, and they're already building the next chapter of everything as well. I guarantee it. They know their next big talents. Both of these organizations, so they're the kind of the future of all the organizations are looking at MOUZ Sports and Spirit, and this is kind of how to get around the broken transfer market.
Okay, that's bold. Come on, Maui. What do you think? There's a lot there to work with.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to break down. I feel like the the clickbait take from the very beginning of that is that some website, like, I don't know, one of those, like, I don't know,
escorenews.com or whatever,
eScore News,
CIS News,
CISnews.com, whatever. They're gonna say that, oh my, Ash says that ZTR is more mature than Snacks because this is the most mature team that he's ever worked with. But that's one thing I took from that. But I feel like, you know, you've talked about all of these teams that are worthy of being praised. I've praised MOUZ NXT numerous times. I'm glad that you bring up the Spirit Academy also. But, you know, I got to bring up a team that's sort of failed on their end in terms of the Academy team. I feel like Fury Academy has let so many players fall through their fingertips over and over and over again. And it's
who did they have? Like, give me some examples. Who did they have?
So they had Kawez. I mean, they had Kawez, who's now on. They had Dissenti, who is now on Imperial. They basically had like Pain players, Imperial players.
Oh wow!
They have Drop, who's now a player that's playing above his role. He played on the Furia team admittedly for a while, but they didn't really see his value. And now Cello's he's been like in and out, struggling.
Dude,
with that
you know
role.
The craziest thing is you're actually right, because logically Furia did the opposite. They did the development of the players, but now to get their own player, they'd have to buy him for like 400k from Imperial. It's like that's the opposite of what we were doing, you idiots. You did it the wrong way around. You're right. Actually,
I'm sure they sold some of those players for some amount of money, but the one player that they tried for the longest time recently was Kai, and that was just such a disaster for his own individual performance and his own confidence. So everybody else did well, but I just obviously had to put my own spin on it. And one team I think actually is that benefited a lot from their own academy is Eternal Fire Academy, just finding Wycadia, because he's obviously been a huge reason that they've improved as a roster. Still not a top 20 player like Kassad's going to have you believe, but he's at the same time, he's still a good player.
They have this Jota kid, I think, as well, playing for Sangl, right? And he's standing out as well. So
he's good.
So obviously, to find two players like that from Turkey, one day I imagine he'd probably be in that, right?
And Jota's actually, he's on loan as far as I know right now, Sangl. So they could get him back if they actually want him. So that at least that's what I read. That's what it says on Wikipedia.
No, he is a good player, by the way. If you watch, actually, he is like the star player of their team. He's pretty legit. No, by the way, actually, one of the best opening points that anyone's ever made on this show, because crucially, you didn't just do the thing sometimes people do, which is they think that it's just a conversation starter. So they just do like two sentences, like, well, I think this because they're good. And you're like, okay. You actually did like you did like your own Ash's thoughts there for 10 minutes where you broke the whole thing down. So to rewind at the beginning, I actually think the thing that was impressive when you were running off all the names there is the reason why I think people haven't come to this realization of how successful academies in general are is because aside from MOUZ NXT, where they just took most of the players to MOUZ, so it's obvious that it came from the academy squad, I think until you run the names like that, Ash, people just think of individual ones. So for example, I notice a lot of people think like Na'Vi Academy was just m0NESY. It's like, bro, it was m0NESY Bit, and it was like fucking Headtrick. It's a whole bunch of people actually who've all been in other teams. And by the way, if you don't know, Headtrick's actually even like been good since he left NIP. Even by the way, the much flamed NPL, you can go watch King T did a whole video. He's actually really good now. Like, I think the point you're making is also quite a valid one, which is, if anything, there's even orgs that, I mean, you could even say, loop in Maui's point about Furia. I'll even add another one. Look, NIP as an org hasn't really got much out of theirs in their main team, but if you look, they've also done the same thing. The one thing you can even give credit to the academies that didn't like promote the players and make good use of them is the academy still worked though, because notice the players from NIP Academy are all like better players now, like ZTR, fucking NP. There's a whole bunch of people out there who could be LNZ, who could just be in a bunch of top teams right now. So I actually think if you look across the board, it is true. Like, this almost has become like, instead of someone just being like a nobody in like tier 2.7, they just go to an academy, and if you do well, you can do the jump to tier 2 at that point in time. You can go straight up. So I do think that's big. By the way, the Spirit one is easily the sleeper, because as you said when you ran that list off there, bro, you could make like the 3-star players of about 2 or 3 different Russian teams using all their players. Like, if people don't remember, the real thing I almost wish we could run back now, I've always thought to myself, in some ways the real Spirit team has like almost like an artificially exaggerated narrative, because they got Shiro, and we all know Shiro, and we already expect him to be the best. If they'd have kept Artfrost, I actually think you would have really seen there how like powerful their academy is, because he wasn't Shiro, but he wasn't that far off actually. He was still pretty good. Like, he had some actual skills. And as you say, if they could have kept some of the names they had before, the Patsies, the Siren, like, you could easily make like a like a top 10 lineup out of just their academy players. I mean, true, one of them is Donk, but an IGL will be a bit trickier, but you could make like the basics of a team just from that's true. And actually, yeah, that didn't mean that. If people don't get it, I actually don't really know yet. if Spirit is a team that's going to spend loads of money on other people. I feel like the point is they only had to spend it on Shiro. That was it. That's the only player they broke the bank for once because you didn't need it. Everyone else was cheap, already old school players, or you already had them. You already had Donk, and obviously the buyout for him was ridiculous the other way. Then I'd also say, I actually do also think that the point you made at the beginning is the most telling one. I wasn't aware of that. That is very impressive and very necessary if it's true that the first thing that being an academy does is sort of set your attitude for where it should be. That is so fucking huge because one of the worst things I have to say people like my mate Simple have done to Counter-Strike is they've made everyone think that that logic that we use for Simple, probably the biggest outlier ever, applies to every team, which goes, yeah, but it's Simple, bro. He's just so good you could never punish him or replace him. So you just got to sort of take it because he's the best player. And I feel like people have taken that. And by the way, even then, I still think a coach should discipline Simple if he's fucked up or he's ruining the environment or bullying someone. But even that, like, extreme version, I think people take that and they think that applies to any star player. And so I would go the other way. I would say the reason why it sounds like it's so different, Ash, the academy system and what it's doing to people's attitude is, I'll give you a real world and a CS example. The real world example would be, this is why in professional sports, one of the reasons why now players have massive egos is back in the day, famously in football, if people don't know, even if you were a world-class player and you were joining like a top team, like you were like the best 17-year-old player in the country, if you joined a top team, the famous thing they made you do is you had to clean the boots of an already starting player, even if, by the way, you're better than him. Doesn't matter. He's an established player. And what it did is it's like a boot camp in the military. It broke you down. It made people realize, like, right, I'm coming in and no matter what my talent level or what my ability at football is or whatever, I'm starting at the bottom of the pecking order. I've got to learn and establish myself. I have to pay respect to the people before me, understand, like, everything isn't about me and my talent only. And then the idea is eventually, after I've been in the team for a while, then I get to be the star and it all flourishes and it's all, I've sort of earned it. I feel like in the modern day, the CS example would be, before academies, everyone thought the min-max way to get good players was FPL, wasn't it? But you're going to get the opposite there, bro. That's where you're going to get the guy who has really crispy aim, but probably the worst attitude ever. Think about the people from that era. A few of them were mega, the Roxes of the world. A few of them were the Esperantos of the world, though, where they thought they were simple with their attitude, but they weren't simple with their game yet. So I think that's actually probably the most significant point you make there. That's amazing if there's actually players coming through who are sort of like the opposite, as you say, the VP players, and they get like, hey, you can't disrespect your coach openly in front of everyone. Like, no matter what you think, I think that's cool. I want more of that, bro. Like, the amount of stories over the years I've heard of even like fucking fame. Put it this way, I'll just throw this out there. My mate Zeus is a mega decorated coach, bro. He's like won majors. He's had like teams that are number one in the world. I heard even he was getting goff from players in this last super team, and he's supposed to be like a fucking made man as a coach, like a marquee level player. And these are real like top professionals who are going to be in the Hall of Fame, and some of them are giving you a stick and not listening to what you're saying or overruling you. That's wild. Yeah, I think that's a very, very key point to make there. And then lastly, I'll say the point about the Messi angle is another reason I hope that players go through this like professionalism pipeline of the academy, whether they become top players or not. One of the things that has been the biggest missing area in esports is top star players actually participating in the prep. Bro, I'm so bored of the fact that, like, I know in the modern day, they will get the notes and they'll like read some of the like performance review and they'll like listen to the trap session for the team. But I won't say names, but put it this way, if you went back to like any of the HLTV top 20 lists for the first, like, let's say, I'll be generous and say 5 or 6 years of CSGO, I could tell you most of the players on that top 20 never scouted an opponent ever. And I used to say to them, bro, the money you are leaving on the table is crazy. Because, bro, even if you are Olaf Meister or you are Kenny S, you know, I could just take your game. And I know this from, like, the NFL. Bro, we could make your game, like, 10% better if you were scouting these guys. Like, if you knew, like, what his, like, heat map is, for example, before anyone did heat maps. But it's why it's hilarious. People like Device just came along and did this quite obvious thing. But then we got hailed as a genius. It's like, what I can't believe is how many people were just going, I can't be bothered with that. Let's just frag. Like, it was an FPL game, but it was, like, the bloody major final. Like, so I actually think that part is really key. I want people like Messi's of the world who come up, and even when they're on the end points, not when they're at the top level and they get in the millions, I want the guy then to be scouting all the smokes and figuring out what the opponent does and listening to his coach and do it. That's exactly what we want, because if you think about it, right, the reason I've made all these points without mentioning anyone's talent yet is if you set all these foundations of professionalism first, and then these are really talented players, bro, we're going to have the best professionals ever. We're going to have the tier 1 is going to automatically be fixed because we're not going to develop here's what we do at the moment. We develop the problems. We wait till they get to the top of tier 1. Then we bring in like a sports psychologist and we go, yeah, we're having problems with this guy. And this guy over here, like, he's sort of talking back. And it's too late then. We've already let let these guys have the diva ego. Like, they're simple at that point. In fact, some of them might even be simple at that point in time. You know what I mean? Like, the real point is you actually want to nip that problem in the bud when they're donk before he gets to tier 1, when he's still on the academy squad, before he's had any chance to be a big shot, and before he can do anything with fucked up media angles and pushing the fat. I think that's a very good point, mate. I think there's actually a lot in that. You want to come back on it? Anything else you want to go in on?
No, I just kind of want to kind of agree with what you're saying. I think this is the future of tier 1, 100%, because it feels like literally now every team has an academy, and this is what all of them are like. I mean, obviously it's not going to be 100%, but the balance has completely shifted now from these unprofessional kids that don't really exist anymore. You can't have the respect there from everyone. They want to learn, and I think this is only going to elevate everything. So it's going to elevate the impact of coaches. It's going to elevate the entire levels of teams, the prep and everything. It's for sure going to be night and day from now, and it's kind of why you're seeing a lot of these young kids go straight into tier 1. The only thing that's kind of phasing them is the stages. Sure. I think that's the only thing they can't really prep for, right?
And by the way, the other thing as well that is key is another thing I can compare in history is, bro, I'm talking for real, until about 2020, there were still top pro players who were like, I don't need to be coached, or you just coach the others, not me. Like that sort of shit, right? I love the idea, again, it's the other way around, and that the young player gets, like, no, the coach is also a resource for me to improve. Like, actually, yeah, give me feedback. Like, tell me what's going on here. Actually, if you don't like doing, I want players who are open to that sort of thing, because what I think players often miss is, you know, when they do that childish thing, Ash, where they act like it's like a battle of the minds. It's like, I'll only listen to you if you know more about CSTM than me. It's like, that's irrelevant, you fucking idiot. The question isn't, does he know more than you? The question is, can he help you? If you see how different the distinction there is, like, there's very few coaches, even bad ones, who can do nothing. You know what I mean? Like, so many of them could be a value add. So I feel like we also, this sounds like the academy system's perfect for this. We need to crack that paradigm that pros ever think like, I don't need to be coached. Bro, all you need to know is this: the greatest players in the history of sports were all coached. Michael Jordan, all of them. And by the way, the really good ones understand their coach also did something. It wasn't just them going, well, I'm not listening to that, and then throwing out whatever they wanted. Like, they were all doing the game plan as well. They're the greatest of all time. No, that's big. Because what would you say to that, Ash? Like, what's your experience been like? Because even in the modern day, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? You still get pros where you can tell they're sort of not vibing with what you're saying, or they're not listening, right?
Yeah, I think the older they are, the harder it is, to be honest. And the amount of times, it doesn't matter what level they are. If they've been there for 6-7 years playing with their friends and playing in especially the national teams, they are some of the worst habits. You can't get out of them. They'll give a comment every time they'll die. They'll be signed on the microphone, and nothing you do. All you can do is kind of slightly improve it. But when you do it with the young kids, they remember it for their entire careers. It's just kind of the way it is. So
yes.
Yeah, this is I don't know if they had the foresight for all of this, the academies, but this is kind of the byproduct of doing it, to be honest.
And by the way, if anyone wants a good sports example of why not only is this the future, but it's the obvious way you get around not having to pay loads of money, the best example ever would be, if anyone knows Spanish football, I would make the joke that I actually think it's a good thing that Barcelona fucked up their transfer market the last 3 or 4 years, because it's now forced them to just bring through their academy players, and notoriously they have one of the greatest academy systems ever. And so the joke is like, the players they're getting like for free that don't cost any money are actually better than the bloody ones they were signing like the last 3 years for like £30 million or whatever. So if anything, if no one knows, not only was it like Messi's did it, it's like they're essentially, that just proves the system works. It wasn't just one crop of players. They're just churning out players every 3 or 4 years who were actually like world class immediately.
Yeah, and it's when they were forced to use them that they were finding more of them. They went for a huge period where they were just buying everyone and not using anyone, and then they're forced to use it, and suddenly they have Lamine Yamal and all these other guys.
Yeah, it's mega, isn't it?
Even the ones that aren't the top tier are still amazing players. So.
Well, and the joke is, in this analogy, that would be like if Fury had kept all the players they brought through instead of then selling them, having to buy them back for mega bucks later. Right, Maui, what is your good point?
Yeah, just making sure. You saw that I changed it just a few minutes ago, right?
Good.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that this is awesome. I feel like finally we're no longer going to have to witness this device spectacle of him as an in-game leader. We're going to finally get cadiaN on this team, and I feel like this is just in many ways weird, but I'm just gonna say it's a good point for me. It's a good point because I don't really want to see device in-game lead anymore. Watching the other players on Astralis kind of have they've just been incredibly inconsistent since he's taken over in-game leading. Like at Cologne, when device was the only player with above a 1.0 rating practically, everybody else was just doing so much worse than him. And at this most recent EPL, I feel like it was spread out a little bit more, but they didn't make it to playoffs even. And so there's so many things that you can really pick at for things that weren't working. And I just really think that This team needed to change up their style tremendously. cadiaN called a style that I always felt should work in CS2, especially given Peeker's advantage seems to be a topic that is constantly brought up in terms of the mechanics of the game. And so having an active-sided defense as opposed to what Astralis were doing, which was kind of just relying on individuals a little bit more, I feel like this is going to boost some of the players like Yabby, like Stown, who in many ways felt like they only succeeded because they were playing under cadiaN. What they were underneath Device was pretty much just it was just so much weaker than anything we had seen for so long. And I just think that the one thing that's a big hesitation, why I'm just like not diving in deep, is that I'm gonna have to watch cadiaN Rifle. I think that's the one thing where I'm just
that's why I'm shocked you picked this as your good point. I thought it would be like ugly or something.
That's the one thing.
Okay.
But I'm
ready to go in on this
calling style. The calling style is going to improve tremendously. That's why I'm so in on it. I'm not jumping both feet in, and that's why I'm like trying to qualify every single statement that I'm bringing out right now. But I will say that I think that Yabby's going to play better, Stown's going to play better, cadiaN himself as an individual is going to probably suck, but I think that this is going to help this team as a whole, and I feel like they're more prone to now make bigger runs than they have in the past.
Thoughts, Ash?
Just, if I assume we're coming to this as a bad point as well, right?
By the way, don't worry. Like I said, I'm going to roast this point, so I'm amazed he picked this. Good. You can disagree if you want. Yeah, you can. Basically, what are your thoughts on cadiaN joining?
I mean, if it's a good point, I have to say good points. I think I'm struggling, but if it's to say bad points, I see so many angles of this that I don't really like them. The good thing, obviously, is they know what they're getting, right? At the very least, they've got Yawn and Stabby who can. I even don't say it on purpose, but they've got those guys that at least know what they're getting. But my flip side is you're basically getting the cadiaN that you got rid of. I know it's not a heroic now, but it's basically what's the difference? In the end, you got rid of him. He went to Liquid. They talk about how much he failed and it was a disaster. And then the worst part of cadiaN is rifling, and you're now going to bring him back, and it feels like it's just set up to fail, like big time for me. And I've like other angles as well, because I think like if I think like the human part of things, I think of someone like HooXi, and I'm like, this if he's coming back to tier 1, this is kind of the team I think it makes the most sense. And now I'm thinking if he wants to go to Astralis, which I assume he's never been on, he's never going to go to Astralis now. This is him kind of done, because cadiaN's probably going to be worse on the rifle than HooXi is, and the fact that the public perception of this team is going to be horrible, because they're going to think that there's a rift there no matter what between the players. Yeah. And I don't really know where does HooXi ever come back from this now, because what has to happen? I hope that he's just turned this team down and he doesn't want to go there, because this is really bad luck now, I think, for him. And I really do actually, I'm not saying I don't think HooXi is a superstar or anything, but I think there is a reason HooXi was on G2 as long as it. I think he has at least a clear way of playing. I think he has some leadership skills as well. But now I'm kind of like, this is a really bad look for him to go back to a guy that he clearly didn't want, who wasn't working after a failure, and then bring him back as a rifler ahead of HooXi. It's a bit of a downer for me on him, and I hope that he just turned this down, and it wasn't them turning him down.
This is kind of a two-part point, because my bad sort of talks about the HooXi side of it.
We'll get to that. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the problem I have with this move, I'm just going to roast the whole thing. I actually don't think it's a good move at all. It's good in this one sense, right? But the problem is this already has built into it a trap, which is it's good in the same way as when they originally announced this Astralis super team at the beginning of the year. That could have been really good. Now, you don't know how. You never knew how would Blame F work with Device, work with Stair. That never made sense. But you looked at the players and you were like, look, maybe there's some way to make this lineup work. And on paper, it should have been really awesome. It was all mega fraggers, right? But you saw that team didn't work. I think this is like another version of that. Like, you just, like you say, Ash, you're just walking into a bunch of obvious problems on day one that have to almost be resolved, or like they have to somehow not exist anymore. Because I think this move's trash. Like, I'll save until I do my own video on this topic, because I'll be able to do like a whole 20-minute rant, like a bit like what I tweeted, where basically it's like, if I was actually any org in esports, I would never sign Danish players unless I already check on the door and we are Astralis. Because, bro, they will just sabotage your team and leave fucking 8 months later and just remake the team in Astralis. Like, what am I doing at this point in time? I'm spending millions on this shit. Like, this money doesn't grow on trees, you morons. Where do you think all that massive salary? So I won't do that. Save that, pause. That'll be on Thorin's channel. Don't worry about that one. But what I'll do is I'll just do cadiaN only, because, bro, almost every reason I can think of is wrong. Like, one, so he's going to join, but he's not the AWPer, right? That's positive in terms of Device, because it means Device probably be better as an AWPer. But the downside I see immediately is, right, first of all, I don't know how cadiaN would call around someone else primary AWPering. That can't be taken for granted. Here's the thing. Normally, I don't want the AWPer to be the IGL. But if the AWPer already is the IGL, as in he was an AWPer first, then he became an IGL, his whole vision of what IGL is going to be dominated by him being the one on the AWP. And I will say it, this is why Maui made that point. cadiaN wasn't just the AWPer like Nitro and Liquid, where it's like, I'll do it on the right side or on a CT side or if I need. He was doing it like on T side, like boost me so I can pick simple on Na'Vi. Like he was doing calls that were like literally, I'm calling up, me, number 9, cadiaN. I'm going for the shot. Like, bro, that's not going to be the same when it's device. Like, you aren't the one doing that. Also, here's one thing when you are an IGL, you sometimes do think. The reason why I always thought device was the dream AWPer for any coach or IGL. It's because, bro, my dream as an IGL is that if I could have the best possible comms for my AWPer, because my AWPer can see more distance, he locks off certain areas, he has scouts information I can't, he can take peeks I can't as a normal rifler, right? cadiaN had all these advantages. They're all going to be stripped from him now. All that goes away. And then and in this scenario, look, we can all go, well, device seemed like he had a great relationship with Gliv. Yeah, who the fuck knows what it's like with cadiaN though, bro? Like, you never know what the comms are like. You never know if people are simpatico if they're on the same page. So already that's a concern. Then when you shift to the idea he's going to IGL, that's why the IGL thing worries me a bit. Normally, I would just say, like, for example, of the two of them, I actually would have preferred James did this move. He just went to IGL and then IGL'd and, went off the AWP and let, like, Monacy or something join VP would have been my dream. The actual idea cadiaN doesn't open than IGLs. I also feel like, I agree on CT side, Maui. That style actually could be really good from CSGO. Actually looks like a great style for CS. Problem I have is on T side again, he did do a lot of calls based around him being like in the middle of the map, him setting up his AWP shot, him moving up with the pack. Like it seemed like a lot of that call. So I can give him the props. Like the obvious upside here, but it's mental, is if we just pretend the whole drama where they left Heroic and fucked the whole org didn't happen, then you can maybe cope by saying, maybe he really is the Stown Whisperer, which I don't really know if that even works. Because first of all, when they switched to device, Stown was pretty good initially. Secondly, he had the same problems. And then thirdly, what do people actually think cadiaN's whispering in his ear that makes him better smell? Like, I don't really actually know what people think they're making that point by that. Because I don't think that's why they're worse, for example. And so, yeah, I don't really get it myself. And then lastly, I'll put this out there as well. Since the player they're kicking is fucking Bro, right, even if we assume, and this is a big assumption, that cadiaN is going to not only not up, he's going to humble himself and be like a HooXi-esque, I just have to play this shit roles player, that still probably puts a lot of stress on Stair's role though. Like, is he really just doing only his role again? Isn't he also going to have to take some spots or some shit that, like, surely he's further down the hierarchy now? And so the other problem I have is, like, I just feel like it's a mess of roles and attitudes, and do people are they even on the same page in terms of how they see CS? By the way, I think Device and cadiaN look like they have a very different perspective on CS than each other. So I don't know. I think it's a terrible move, personally. I hate it. I hate this move.
I do feel like it's gonna rejuvenate Stown though. But okay.
I mean, it has to. That's got to be an upside.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's. I mean, for them to actually finally say that we were wrong, that we actually want to play with cadiaN again. I feel like Stown and Yabby.
Bro, the worst thing about this is it doesn't even look like they actually believe that. It's like for real, they were like, oh no, we do want to play with him, just not in Heroic. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, imagine being Heroic after this, by the way. Like, was it, by the way, if it wasn't for the fact there's like 9 months between it, I would go full by the numbers, Thorin, and just do a whole like conspiracy theory that this was like another Nicola Nyholm genius, like slow burn plan the whole time to like, we just all gradually leave Heroic and then we rejoin later on in Astralis. Like, it almost looks like some fucking 7D chess, doesn't it?
I was going to say that as well.
It does though, doesn't it? It's like, low key, in the end, hasn't Astralis won in every possible sense and destroyed Heroic? Like, what have we done?
In sifting through the comments for this one from other pundits, I did find some people saying, was this just like the most roundabout way to actually get cadiaN off the op finally and get a better opper for Heroic? Because I mean, Stown and Yabby at some point they probably actually were okay with the calling. It's just that they couldn't believe in cadiaN as their primary opper. But just like by the numbers really quickly, like Stown hadn't had an event with a sub 1.0 rating for Heroic since 2021. Like that's 2022, 23, and the very end of him playing for their team, where he was just seriously like so consistent. And with Astralis already, he had 5 events where he had well beneath a 1.0 rating. Like I'm talking 0.75, 0.87, 0.80, and that's in such a short span of time with them. So he definitely at this point realized, okay, the best IGL that I've played with is cadiaN. We want to get I need cadiaN to be my caller again. even if there are going to be repercussions in terms of Bro's obviously a better rifler than cadiaN is, but they just need better calling overall.
I think it's actually deeper than that for Stirs Down, because I think that Heroic had such a clear way of playing it, especially on the T sides. They basically had 3 guys that were basically all the time were going to jump out no matter what, and it was always 3 different guys, always Jabby, always Shush, and always Tesses, always jumping out. And Stan would never ever be that guy, and he would always be the guy last alive with cadiaN. He's going to go in and he's going to get 1 kill, he's going to survive all the time, and he was so clearly like the superstar of that team because of the system they played. And their system they played was like, honestly, it was one of the hardest ones to play against. You couldn't prep against it. It was mixed up brilliantly all the time. And I think his role in that team was so clear that he was a star player. This is something that elevates anyone. If you know that you're in the team and you are the best player and the team is set up to be around you and it's playing to all your strengths, you're going to see everything that's going to work, right? And I think Astralis themselves, the other players, they know they cannot set the game up just to set themselves up, because the team has such high expectations. They're setting the team way to win, and they just don't have the same sort of system that cadiaN does. And I think cadiaN's one of the only guys I've seen in the last few years where it's such a clear, obvious system and he was the main beneficiary of that all the time. So I think for sure, if they implement that again, I don't know if they will, because cadiaN rifling, is cadiaN going to be the guy jumping in and struggling on CT side? I think that's really, he's setting himself up to fail, and also the expectations of the org. He has to kill it, and I don't think he really has a choice. He's already on the. People always want this to fail because of the whole media side of things, the disaster that it was, the past with the cheating and stuff like this. No one's on their side, and he has to win them over. And this is. It's a really difficult one, but I think he's a phenomenal leader, and now he has to really prove himself hard, and this is really difficult for him. I think he could have landed on way better teams and looks better than this, but for Stown, this is probably great. For him, I think this might be a real difficult one.
The funny thing is, I even have on past shows, I might even have done a hot take point made, I even used to say back in the day, the biggest problem I always had with Heroic was that they themselves didn't seem to ever have any interest in like testing the transfer market and paying for people. Like there was never even a rumor, even behind the scenes guys, ever that they get like Device, Carrigan, like the biggest names from Denmark that you would think, if you're this team and you could bring one of these players in, don't you just go to the absolute top? So the funny thing is, I used to myself speculate, why can't cadiaN in CSGO this is, just be IGL and bring Device in? Wouldn't that be like the ultimate team? But the difference is that Heroic team was super tight. Think how great the chemistry was. Also, the one thing people are always going to ignore, like notice in this discussion, we're talking like, because you've got Yabby, Stown, and cadiaN, it's basically Heroic. It's like we are missing 2 of the like most reliable, selfless role players in all of fucking World Counter-Strike, in Tessus and Shush, who, by the way, still do that in Heroic now, even when Heroic's up and down as fuck. Like, I think you can't ignore like the quality those players had in like rounding out the, like, to me, they're part of why the chemistry was so tight. Like, they were just fucking people who were the ultimate soldiers. Whereas these other guys clearly do have a bit of the ego, and they have to be catered to and given the resources. And then lastly, I'll just say this. The reason why I would have wanted Device in CSGO with cadiaN is I also think cadiaN's style was one of those styles that worked way better with MR15 than MR12, right? I've heard, it might be more exaggerated in Liquid, but in Liquid, they just told me straight up, the players in that team, that he just tried to call, like, you could imagine, like, a massive ego. Like, basically, the way he called is what fans stupidly think is how Carrigan calls, which isn't true, which he doesn't really just sit down and goes, no one knows my plan. I don't know my plan. So how can the enemy know my plan? Now watch as I genius Magnus Carlsen come up with the move. He doesn't really do that, guys. He actually does study the demo, and he has a rough game plan, and he thinks about what he's going to call for you. And then, yeah, on the fly, he can add in a few genius calls to rise Carrigan, right? I've heard cadiaN was doing the Nightmare Fuel caricature of that, where he really was from the beginning of the game to the end. It's like, oh, nice playbook, won't need that, chucking it out. And just starting from like round 1, just doing crazy like hero calls like it's a pog every fucking round. And that, by the way, I've heard those players hella didn't fuck with that. Like, they tried it a few times, and when it wasn't working, they were like, is he for real? This is like, wait a minute, you mean actually like some, like that fucking mad statement Zonic said about being the bag? You mean cadiaN's system is, he's the system? Like, what? Don't we get any input? And so all I'll say is that better not be what he's going to do here. Because if he is, 1, I don't think that's going to work. And 2, I can't even imagine how people like Device are going to just go, yeah, keep telling me cadiaN everything to do. Like, how's that going to work? So I think that one's mad. So the difference is, when I wanted him to join in CSGO, I had way more confidence in his style. Also, the thing I was going to say was, I think in MR15, someone like cadiaN, I actually think the same with Snappy, I think they are some of the biggest victims of MR12. They have way less time to cook on T side. Those are the guys where that 3 extra gun rounds is the time they need to figure out the round sometimes, or to turn a game, or to do the extra 2 rounds of conditioning that then make that round work for the rest of the map, and you win the 40 rounds that you need. You know, they're the guys where they get 2 unlucky rounds and get money broken. So their T-half's just ruined, and you don't see the brilliance. Notice how both of them seem like half as good as a caller now. Like, I don't think that's a coincidence. So I'm actually more worried about it being CS2 as well. I also feel like they're going off some shit of like, think about this. Now they're going to attempt the craziest experimental move. They're going to try and pair the heroic CSGO system with however device from old Astralis views CS. And then Stayer's just there like, you're not going to cut me though, right, guys? Like, fuck knows what that guy's life's like now, by the way. He's like actually fucking, he's like the guy who knows he's going to be voted off like Big Brother or something. You may as well do whatever you want now, Stair. Like, I guess in like 6 months it's HooXi or blame after someone coming in. Like, you could just fucking, just chill. Just enjoy the game. Don't worry about it. I think this one's mad. What I can't handle, I want to throw it back to you, Maui, is why did you just come straight out the gate when this is like a good point? Like I say this point, listen, there's some positives, but this is ass. Why are you going, this is good. Why is this good?
I mean, it's good because the calling's going to be better in my eyes because I really started to.
It's good for Astralis then. You think it's better than what Astralis had? How about that way? It's better than what they had.
Yes. The take is that this is going to upgrade their team lightly. I'm not necessarily saying that this is going to just be like a world-beating team out the get-go, but I do think that the way that device was calling after a while, like. Dude, there were so many T-sides. It's actually kind of crazy when I looked at the numbers on Brown win percentage versus the eye test of what that T-side looked like. Sometimes the amount of times someone like Yabby Stound would win a 2v3 or a 2v4 to win them a T-side round instead of actually being the calls that were actually good for them. That was something that was where the round win percentage was higher than I actually felt like the calling was as in terms of how good it is. Kind of like what's happening with G2 in my eyes right now. But now I just think that there's going to be better setup overall. And I also will say that I felt like the CT side from Astralis was kind of lifeless sometimes. It didn't always feel like it had the most just good ideas. People weren't taking enough risks, and I do feel like you need to take more risks. And really, I think the main reason I just think this is good overall is that I really stand by the idea that the way cadiaN called CT sides when Heroic were in their prime is the way you should be playing a CT side. And if he can convince everybody to get on board, and he should be able to, given that it's Stound and Yabby, to go back to what was working for them when they were actually winning, then I feel like this team can actually be a trailblazing team for how a meta should be played in CS2.
Okay. Yeah, I can. Yeah, the CT side, the way they prepped and everything, they always started every game on fire, right? And no matter what, you have to start on fire. So I can see that side. I can see that side working, to be honest. And the thing is, now with them, you'll see they'll definitely see a way of playing. Sorry, the way they play, and maybe it will work, maybe it won't. But at least you're going to see him have his impact, I think.
All right, I've got one for you. I will actually I'll tie it actually to something we were talking about in the first point, is that I actually do think it is a good sign that in the modern day, not just the academy thing, but I'll tie it to that. I actually feel like people finally understand, Ash, that CS is a game in the literal sense that it's a fun product that like people who casually play for fun. But I get the feeling that people finally actually understand, almost like sports, this is your job though. Do you know what I mean? I feel like so many people before that, a lot of people who were pros weren't actually cut out to be a professional. They were just really good at the game, or even worse, they just had really good aim is the nightmare. Like there's some Boros type character where it's like, bro, you've got zero of the qualities I want, but you can just shoot people in the head. Like, that it's not 2012. That doesn't work for me. Like, I need more than that. So there's not only is there a lot of players that were from that cookie cutter that wasn't very good, quite frankly, but I also feel like people actually understand concepts. Like, it's not just even like people who are coached in the academies. Like I was saying earlier, the amount of pros I now see where like the extreme example is like the veterans like Snake, where they even do content like this. Well, they actually do content where they break down concepts and they show like all the boring things you do as a pro. If you don't know, by the way, behind the scenes, this is one of the reasons why there's certain players I think had longevity that was longer than they should have, like NBK. They used to do all this stuff. Like, it's not a troll. If you ever watched NBK's stream from something mad like 2012, this guy would wake up, put the stream on, do the like aimbots, or CSDM back then actually. He would just do for real like a drill sergeant, like, right, I could do 100 AK kills, 250 M4 kills, 100 Deagle kills, then I swap to the scout. By the way, that's why, people like him would have weird like proficiency on the scout, for example. They would practice all these things every day, the most boring shit ever. And this is, by the way, this is when he's already at the top of the game. This is when he's like won a major and been in the finals of every tournament and had like, I think they had a streak once where they had 14 times in a row they were top 4 or something. People like that, that's actual professionalism. That's what a sportsman does. I always make this point, and it's so badly missed, right? One thing that a really talented young player will do, and it's the stupidest thing they can say, is they'll go, oh, I don't need to practice X because I'm really good at X. It's like, that's how you stay really good, you moron. I always give this example, right? Steph Curry is the best three-point shooter ever. He's probably also shot the most three-point shots ever, and I bet he practices the most three-point shots ever. But by the logic of our old FPL pal I'm referring to, he actually should just stop bothering with the three-point shot because he's got that nailed anyway. Just be sort of 80% as good. And in this analogy, I don't know, work on his fucking post-up game or something. Like, what are you talking about, bro? So I actually just feel like, not just on the academy level, though it sounds like that's certainly part of what's like moulding these young men, which also, by the way, is another aspect we didn't even bring up on that, is also even just the idea of having actual like mentor figures in your life and people who can like steer you the right way and also care about your development. That's big too. I also think the idea that pros finally see it as an actual career is awesome. It has downsides still. There's certain aspects I don't like about that, but I think to me that is a big difference. I think that was something that lagged a long time in CS, especially out of the esports. Certain other ones, like the difference in some other esports games is when you have like Koreans and Chinese, but they have a very different culture over there. They can command certain respect or demand you behave a certain way. I feel like for Counter-Strike, I have seen the last few years a massive shift in the paradigm. What do you think, Ash?
Yeah, I say the same, to be honest. And again, I have to link it mostly back to the academies with the younger guys. So I'm also working with the younger guys as well now. But what I notice the most is they'll just ask you suddenly, can we go watch this demo? I'm struggling with this stuff. We go do it. What should I improve on? What should I work on? And they're asking for outside perspective. And sometimes when you're playing, even as myself, as a 34-year-old terrible player at the game, I'm playing, I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm terrible. But if I was sat back watching my own game, it'd be easy, right?
Sure,
like, yeah. Counter-Strafe is terrible. Work on that. His brain's terrible. Everything's awful. His sense looks wrong. Like, whatever. I think it's really, really hard to actually watch your own game back and think about his problems and do it yourself. And now they're actually willing to ask. I see people streaming all the time and they just want to do it. They're playing games. And to be fair, this is probably the only time I'm going to give any credit to Valve. But I think MR12 is making the game more fun in the casual sense, as in they'll load the face it and play it. It takes 30 minutes and they don't have to worry about it. Turn the brains off, swing everything. In CSGO, it was more like holding angles, being smart, using utility. Now it's just everyone loads a donk demo, go swing whatever you want. So I think it actually has made the game more fun, and that's definitely the last time today I'm going to be praising this because I actually hate the game as it is right now. But for sure, I think it's coming from the younger guys. It's coming from the young guys. It's just good habits. Everything is good habits at the moment, and I cannot commend the guys enough. Whoever's doing it, I hear like in the Danish scenes, well, like in their schools, they have coaches going to the schools and stuff and teaching about Counter-Strike as well. And it's no wonder why the Danish scene is churning out players non-stop, right? When they have this they're putting people on the right tracks. They're not seeing the Boroses of the world. Boros, who could potentially be one of the best players in the world, right? But now he's never going to have a chance anymore, I imagine. There's lots of other players like this. I say, for example, I always thought Smooya potentially was the top 5 AWPer in the world, and he's just completely GG'd himself for years and years and years. And now no one wants to touch him. And there's so many other people like this, and the academies have straightened it out. And now the mentality of everything is, long-term career. How can I prolong my career? Everyone in our team goes to the gym now, non-stop. All of them are going there. And I think, wow, before, not a single person would ever think of going outside or anything. They'll just be playing the game, right? Yeah. So they're looking after each other. Something somewhere is having a big impact, and I can only assume it's the academies and seeing other people do it as well.
By the way, the underrated thing I think about the gym one, because that's even something I know some of the League of Legends teams in LCS where they have to live in the same team house in Force. Like, if people don't know, I believe in Cloud9's LCS team, you have to go to the gym. Like, I believe it's even set time. Like, I think you have to go at like 9 in the morning or something. And what people don't get about that is, it's not the idea that like the owner of Cloud9, Jack, just wants like everyone to be buff or something. It's that he gets the idea that once you can do something disciplined every day at 9 a.m., you can do everything in your life like that. Like, that building block will actually transfer to everything. And then once you can conceptualize, I can do something bit by bit, and it builds up. That's like actually the secret to improving in almost every area. By the way, as an aside, it's the reason why I say this is so like impressive to me that players finally get that this is a professional career, not just fucking around in a video game with other people's money, is because there's so many stories that I've been able to tell on shows that sound really funny, but they're actually sort of heartbreaking if you think what they imply about the sport. Like, I've told this one years before, it's been said in many interviews since. When Envious, the team that won DreamHack Cluj-Napoca when they won their second major, the story is not a joke. Before that, in their boot camp, they were losing scrims so much, they just all got together and went, I think we should just stop playing scrims. It'll ruin our morale. And then somehow, and the worst part of this story, Ash, is, if I was writing the story, they'd go to the major come last and realise what a stupid thing that is. Sadly, they won that major, bro. So that made them think, yeah, that makes sense. And I even told them at the time, that's one of the stupidest stories I've ever heard. They will actually never, you've almost done some sort of fucked up, superstition move there, where it's like, oh, wait, it's the practice that's making us lose. No, Pozo, it's what you're doing in the practice. It would never make sense to practice less. You actually need to, if anything, look, maybe have a break of the stress, but practice more. You probably need to figure out what you shit at. That idea, like I said, was rewarded with a bloody major, and that's all we're talking. By the way, we're only talking 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It's not even like it's 20 years ago. That's not even that uncommon an idea. There's similar stories like that over the years where it's it's not working with this guy. Oh, just don't scrim as much then he won't be arguing. It's that is not the solution to, again, these are the opposite. That's a solution in the same way as my arm is itchy. Well, I've amputated it. It doesn't itch anymore. Well, you're right on that, but I haven't got a fucking arm anymore. So, I'll take the rough with the smooth, I guess. What do you think, Maui? What's your take on this topic?
Well, I just feel like players nowadays, you can't really just get lucky for an extended period of time. That's why the major is still such a weird event, because people like Boros, obviously, it's not that he got lucky. He's obviously very skillful, but sustained success in this space is what we have always strive for. And that's why we always talk about teams in the lens of, is this sustainable? Are we going to keep seeing these results? Is this just a honeymoon? Because that's all we always want to see. We want to see people have dominance, continue dominance. Eras, in a way, help define narratives in this space, because for a team that's actually going to stay on top of everything, to always have the right mentality, to be in the right mindset, even when a player is going through a tragedy, that's actually, in some ways, the whole topic of sports psychologists has gotten a little weird, because sometimes you see people pick up a sports psychologist and then nothing really changes, or they just suck, and then people are like, is this guy a fraud? But it's not really up to him to win and lose the games. It's about him trying to make sure that they steer themselves to the right path and stay on the right course when they're on it. So I feel like when we talk about team players and things from I want to say 2018, I guess basically before the Astralis era,
okay,
I would say that a lot of the people that were playing back then kind of they just were gifted, and they just had a lot of hours in the game. And I feel like nowadays, you're not really seeing, sure, there's a couple gifted talents, like you'd say Zywoo, Donk, MonteCristo, yeah, they're gifted in a lot of ways, but they also have 15,000 hours.
Oh, sure.
Each, yes. They didn't just get here by accident. It's not like, oh, he's a prodigy that never plays the game. It's no, if anything, he's only playing the game. And the prodigy is actually the fact that he doesn't need to balance his life. He can actually just keep grinding, and he doesn't need to go to the gym. That's what's impressive about him. So I feel like the way that this community and the way that this sport has steered itself over the last 7-ish years has all been for the better. I don't think that there's really any negative to this. Maybe some of the low-ranking players are like, well, it's making it harder for me. It's well, it's because you don't grind as hard as these people that are successful and continuing success.
By the way, I actually realised I could have done a player. If I'd have done a player point, I maybe would have done HooXi being better or something or whatever, but it's not that big. I actually wanted to do an abstract point. By the way, I did forget a straight fire joke earlier when one of you was talking about the whole cadiaN thing, which is the joke. It's sort of if you know British humour, I like sort of Harry Hill type humour, Ash, where it's you're referring back to a joke you already established. And that's what's funny. It's if you know the beat of the joke before. So the joke would be, Maui, I actually hope now that Astralis actually win the major, and then when they win the major, they're interviewing them all, and when you get the moment where you've been interviewed, and you go, and Banks goes, so what about you, Stan? You've been through a lot of hard times. I hope he wins a major. And goes, yeah, I've just won a major, and I fucked that guy's girlfriend. Because remember, I didn't do that. You all set that up, that was some sort of karmic justice, that by losing in a video game, that made it somehow even that he fucked a guy's girlfriend, but then they got it back. Don't worry, Malb's protected your honor by beating him in a video game. So by that logic, if he then wins, and by the way, God forbid he ever beats G2, if Astralis ever beats G2 or wins a major, now it was actually a good thing he fucked that guy's girlfriend, because he won. So that means God and karma, the Hindu concept of karma, life sins being rectified by the universe, actually implied it was a good thing. So all I'm saying is, God, if you're listening, If he ever wins a major, then you want people to be unfaithful.
The karmic retribution at that point is forgiving cadiaN. So now that he's forgave cadiaN, that's the new arc that he's...
Oh, right. No, that's what we should have done. The actual real scenario here, the good point, okay, I've spun it into a good point finally. The good point is Stound's curse is broke. Because what he had to do to break his curse, like a Disney movie, is he had to finally let the resentment against cadiaN go from his heart. And then in fixing his heart, now he can be forgiven for what he did to someone else's heart. That's genius in a way. Think about that one. And then secondly, I haven't figured it out. We're going to workshop this. But there's a straight fire joke that if I was on a desk there, I would definitely do about cadiaN and Stound and about how them rejoining shows they either do or don't believe in the bro code. There's a whole thing there, but we're going to workshop that. You can see the genesis of it there, Mark. It's almost really good, but it's got to be workshopped a bit. Like, you know, you got to get the timing on that one right. You got to get that. Yeah. So we'll put that one side. That's all good. We'll put that to one side.
Above all else, you got to stick with your bros.
Exactly. Yes. Right. Okay. What is your bad point, Ash? What are we going with here?
All right. So if people don't know, I am English, so I'm going to have a big moan here because that's what I like to do best. So I'm going to talk about tier 2 at the moment, and I think it's in a real big mess. And
by the way, just to start with, one thing I always do wonder about is what do you define as, like, where would tier 2 roughly be? Because I have to say, I think I'm different from other people. I feel like a lot of people think tier 1 means like known teams or something. I always personally took tier 1 as roughly the top 10. Maybe I'm different in that sense. Where do you think tier 2 starts for you? Just so we get the idea of the sort of teams you're talking about here.
I think tier 2s are teams that they're locked out of the tier 1 tournaments. They can't play any of them, and then if you put them against them, they're not going to beat them. To be honest, most of the time, not going to beat them. Okay. I think now, obviously, we are tier 2 because we've just started a team and everything, so it's fine for me. And I think also at this point, I'm basically like hard stuck in tier 2 and have been for most of my career. So I think I've got a bit of expertise in it as well, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
no, but by the way, that's worth saying itself. You're not looking down this team. You're in tier 2. You're saying
I'm locked in here. I'm locked in there. Don't worry about that.
Why are you saying that like you're Rorschach? Like, I'm not. You're locked in here with me in tier 2.
I mean, it's been a long time now, and to be honest, there's so many things that have just really annoyed me since I've come back. So we've been tier 1 for last year. We've been playing all tier 1 events, right? And now we're back. Yeah. So reality's come crashing down and everything. So I've literally written a list of things that are really pissing me off recently. So first off, the schedule, right? So I looked yesterday, and in the last month, Sinners have played 76 maps in 1 month.
Fucking hell!
In the whole of last year, Liquid played 76, and the whole of last year, Liquid played 67 maps on LAN total. And I understand, on LAN you don't play as many, right? This is ridiculous, and to be honest, a lot of the time it's higher.
By the way, just so people are clear there, remember, he didn't do year for year. It's not that Liquid played like 67 in a year. He said they played 70 in a month, and Liquid in a whole year played 60. Understand how crazy that differential is? Yeah, it's bonkers, mate.
And it's actually worse than that as well, because what most of the tournaments we play is Swiss system. And we'll play a game, you have to wait until the entire system's finished, until everything's finished in the entire fixture list, right? And then at 11 p.m. at night, maybe later, maybe slightly earlier, you know your next game for the next day.
Right.
And this is like a 9 a.m. start a lot of the time, right? Yeah. So we'll go, and obviously you don't finish your game, and you don't instantly fall asleep, instantly go straight to bed, and you awake in the morning, right? You don't obviously instantly start at 9 a.m. You're meeting earlier, it takes some time to wind down, you come back, there's no prep, everything's a shit show, you're going straight away the next day. And then the next day, you're waiting again till 11 p.m. Oh, wow, we've got the early game again. Waiting all day long from the early start doing this, right? And I think this is kind of misconstrued in how Stewie 2K did it a few years ago in NA. But when you're doing this every day, it's really bad because not only are you playing with no prep, no sleeping time or anything, your whole life is revolved around, I don't know what time we're playing. Yeah. My girlfriend's every day saying, when can I see you? No idea. I don't know what time we're playing. I don't know if he's prep the next day. I don't know if I'm going to have all day free. I can't meet anyone. You can't do any friends. And the next part of this is all the tournaments are overlapping big time.
Yes. So
we're playing, like, for example, we played 2 CCT finals in a row and lost them both, because tier 2 is really fun. And we're also playing the final. The CCT is also streaming the group stage for the next playoff, to go into the next playoffs for the next tournament. And you end up, half the time we're playing, I'm like, I don't even know what we're playing. I just know who we're playing. So I'm just going to prepare for this. And I don't really care anymore who it is. And everything's just become a blur. You play every week. You play the next day, next day, next day. You're like, when are we going to have a day off? Well, when we get knocked out. When we get knocked out, that's a happy time for us because we get a day off. If we don't, we're doing great. So it's like, you get both sides of it, right? As well as this scam tournaments. So many scam tournaments. And the worst thing about scam tournaments...
As in they don't pay the money?
We know they're not going to pay the money before we go in. But the worst thing is these tournaments will announce and they put huge prize money, and we know Christ, we've got to play it for the Valve rankings, and we know they're inviting people who are blacklisted, people who are cheating like Joel, people who are blatantly cheating, and we know, I can see in prep, he's cheating his face off. In the demo, it's hard to see. In prep, prep is the thing that shows Joel up. I've had multiple coaches talk to me before and after game saying, "Hey, what do you think of Joel in your game? Do you think he was cheating?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're adamant he's cheating, 100%." And we knew it, but we obviously can't say anything.
Sure.
And thankfully, Acros shut this out. But most tournaments he's blacklisted, so we're getting away from this. And I guarantee he's coming back. By the way, he'll come back. He's there's no downsides to him fixing games or anything, and he owes a lot of money. He'll come back, and someone will bring him in and give him a chance. It won't be a good team. It'll be another BC game or a 5W, an org that doesn't even exist. By the way, existed for one tournament. Said to all the players in advance, "Don't practice, don't worry about it. Just play his tournament." And I heard this before, and I thought, "Oh my god, this is so blatantly fixed." And we played him in the semi-final. He went plus 26, and he absolutely destroyed us, and we had no chance. And afterwards, we have to sit there and go, "Well, scam tournament. What can you do?" The buyouts are ridiculous, and the worst example I have is before we played the Malta RMR, back before we got Kios, we were trying to trial Kakanito, this was back with some Blue Jays with Kicksan, right? Yeah. And we wanted to play him in the RMR qualifier. You could only play one of them. And they said to him, right, he has 2 days left in his contract, and we did him the next day, and we said, "Can we use him for this?" And they said, "Yes, but you owe us 20K if you do it." And we like, for 1 day, 20K. Like even if like Ronaldo was on 1 day contract, you probably won't even pay this, right? You'd be like, "Oh, I'll just wait for the next day." And this meant the difference between him getting a chance to play in the team to play in the major, and we qualified to that major, by the way, and we couldn't try him because of that, and we just missed that qualifier. We couldn't play it.
Yes.
We couldn't sort anyone out in time, so we just played 3 of the 4 qualifiers. I had to play with Kios, and luckily we qualified. This is how buyouts were 3 years ago, and they're getting worse now. I mean, obviously this is an extreme example, but now they're worse. Like I said, if the player is over 1 rated, so you look at 6 figures straight away, and they won't even, you know it's already like that without even asking.
Yeah.
The state of the game in the tier 2 as well, everyone is watching donk demos, which means that everyone is just swinging everything all the time without thought. So
I love it.
They're waiting all around the map, and then they just go, "Right, I am donk, swing, swing, swing." And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And half of my job now is going to games and going, "Oh my god, it's another team that think they're full of donks," right? You don't even do prep. You like doing like mental reinforcement for the game. Like, guys, if you get fucked over, please just focus on next round. Don't worry about it. It's all good. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about what they're doing. They'll keep doing it. They'll give us rounds. Just don't worry about it. And this is half of my prep now, because teams are all playing like this in tier 2 because they don't care about being consistent. They just want to win. They want to beat you a one-off game, and they'll just keep doing it over and over. I see that the streams are a shit show because all the fans obviously in there, it's been normalized now that you can just go in and say throw in, cheating, throw in.
Oh, right.
Scripted.
That's all it is. Right.
That's every single comment. And people have stopped, years and years ago, people stopped even defending it anymore. So if you're a new fan, you're going to a CCT, I want to watch GamerLegion, every comment saying cheating, throwing, scripted, whatever, you're going to think, "Oh, wow, no one's saying anything. It probably is all scripted." All of tier 2, every single team. At least in tier 1, it gets drowned out by the memes and the people that actually want to watch the game, right? And it's even worse because the stream is then being run by people who are the casters who.
I thought he was trolling when he actually said he had like a whole list, Maui. He's actually doing like the whole lot. Keep going, it's good. Keep going.
The casters have been paying fuck all because they're getting the cheapest ones, and then the guys obviously they're working 12 hours a day. They have no idea what's going on in the game because of the cheapest ones. They don't have time to research. They're talking about vetoes. They don't know what maps you play. They don't know who your players are. They don't know who in-game leaders are. They're just saying anything random, and that sticks with people again. Half the tournaments aren't using anti-cheat at all. Every team you play against plays a completely different style. You're like, "Oh, one game, this team's going to play kind of normal, or this team's swinging everything, peeking everything, no flashes, no smokes, or the rushing fakes and everything." And I went and did a fact check, right, on teams from the top 10 to 20 in the last few months. I saw Nip, Fnatic, Astralis, Falcons, VP, Big, and Saw. All of them have played CCT, and none of them made it past the second round. None of them.
Because it's because of this random element where you just can't beat these random teams, basically.
Because it's literally a total shit show. It's a total shit show. And in my opinion, one of the reasons we were so successful in Paris is we were stuck in here, being molded by the darkness of everything and just the chaos of what's going to happen today, what we're playing against this time. And when we get to tier 1, teams actually want to win and they want to be consistent, right? So they're making consistent decisions, and you're playing, you're like, wow, everything makes sense that they're doing. This is great. I love it. No one's going to run for a smoke because they have the feeling they're going to do it. I saw Donk wide peak this angle and swing and everything. It's actually it's nice to play it. But I will say as well, CCT is literally holding the whole of tier 2 CS together because it's the only legitimate tournament that's out there paying the money out, making you use anti-cheat, making you use cameras, everything. But obviously the downside of this is, for some reason now, ESL ranking doesn't even factor CCTs a lot of the time into the rankings. and we have nothing else to play unless it's off anti-cheat against people you know are cheating, how are we meant to ever get any points? We can't get anything. Unless we qualify to the RMR, go deep in the major and go. We are stuck in tier 2 trying to be consistent in the most inconsistent environment you could possibly imagine. And we have to just sit there, suck it up and be like, well, why are you guys not 70% win rate? Well, you try play 70% win rate when everyone's picking random maps, jumping through smokes every opportunity. They don't care. They'll do it over and over and over. And you're playing off anti-cheat. You have to win every tournament you're playing in. Oh, wow, we didn't win this one playing against Joel. Well done, Joel. You're such a talent. Well done.
I did some research. I was thinking of making one of my points about some of the teams that actually made it through the RMR, for example, but then you look at what they're actually doing in the online tournaments. And like, for example, it's one of the Czech teams. I think it's Unity, actually. They're just Eklot, for example. So Eklot made it to the RMR, for example, and it's like, you see these teams make it through these closed RMR qualifiers, and then Eklot, who made it through by beating teams like Bleed, for example. They beat Monty, they beat OneWin, but then they start playing again in Tier 2, and they're just losing to like Navi Junior, Copenhagen Wolves, K27, and just the most random teams. And it is, I mean, just even by looking at the results, I'm just constantly like, how did this team even punch above to actually make it at this particular qualifier? Because it's like you're in this gauntlet of just playing all of these different online events day in, day out, every single day. Like you said, Sinners have like 70 something maps in the last month, and it's difficult to say this is the more important one, and it's also difficult to say when you're playing it, is the other team going to treat this like this is the important one or not? And the answer is practically no. Like, you don't know if they're just going to random you jumping through a smoke or anything like that. If they're just going to play some ridiculous style like 1-1-1-1-1, everybody's pushing at the same time, trying to take a duel all at the same time. So the tier 2 space in general, I will say I do not envy people that are trying to compete in it. I don't envy Kassad for trying to make Bleed work through everything that's happening right now, because you can put resources, you can put some good fundamentals, a good foundation into a tier 2 roster. But I mean, I'd be hard pressed to see a team like, with the exception of maybe Spirit because they have Donk, but like take a team like, say, Navi. I think Navi would be the most hilarious team to watch try to play through multiple CCTs in a row when they have such a defined style. They have so much structure. A lot of what they're doing is playing off of the mid-round rotations of tier 1 teams. But if you play against a tier 2 team, they're just going to swing. Like, they don't care. The second that they're even slightly confused, they're going to swing into your player. And Bit, even though he's so good at like picking that perfect time to swing from Palace when the A anchor is looking the other direction, it's like that A anchor, you don't know what he's doing in tier 2 at all, and he might just be swinging you into Palace because he's getting confused. They might just swing through mid late. They're gonna just constantly throw the rule book out the window. And that's admittedly what, say, Thomas said exactly with Into the Breach when they were playing the Paris Major. They're like, we don't play tier 1 CS. We know we can't play tier 1 CS, and so we're just gonna play the style that we think is best, which is Cypher running up A ramp every single round. So I mean, beyond that, all of these other aspects that you brought up, the fact that there's varying levels of anti-cheat, I just feel like that's downright, like how is that even allowed? Like, that should not be allowed at all. Like, I'm glad you bring this up because it shines light on this issue, which I wasn't quite aware of. Like, I don't know, for example, and there's a reason that I don't really pay attention to results of, like, I don't know, Fast Cup, CSGO, Run Cup, Season 1. I don't know anything about United 21 League. I don't know about the European Pro League. Like, I don't know about that. The only one I actually do watch, it's funny that you bring up CCT, is CCT. Like, I see a lot of, when I watch CCT results, I feel like this has been confirmation bias because I've just kind of been co-streaming a lot of their stuff lately. But I do feel like when I watch CCT, I just see the teams win consistently in CCT. Like, Bait has won multiple CCTs, and I almost can kind of bet that they're going to do well in a CCT environment. But then you, like you say, you put these tier I don't know, 1.5 teams, like the ranked 10th through 20th teams in these CCTs, and it's just kind of random for them because they don't know what style they're going to be facing up against. And there's just so much. I'm glad you just kind of brought this issue to light because I'm not keeping a close enough eye on this stuff to know this, and you clearly know from experience that it is just a complete shit show.
I saw, luckily I did write down the list of things you were saying there, so I can go over most of them. First of all, on the schedule one, I actually do agree. That has always been, especially actually, what's so weird is people remember that people used to complain about the circuit because the tier 1 pros, like the Astralises, used to complain in like pre-COVID basically, like, oh, we play too much. But like, I don't think people realise they like fixed tier 1 because there's just less tournament operators. In fact, actually next year, the joke is we're going back to that circuit with Star Ladder and it's going to be like 1 million tournaments again. So because fans only care, as we learned from CSPPA, fans only give a fuck about tier 1. They don't really care about any. In fact, they don't even care about low tier 1. They really just mean my favourite player and my favourite team. So what people didn't notice was, guys, every single like up and coming good team that breaks into tier 1 basically has already like destroyed themselves playing tier 2, grinding to get to that level. Remember Monty last year? Or 9-9 and all these, Cole when it was on the online era. These people were doing the same thing you're talking about. In 3 months, they would play 150 official maps, like every online cop, every home suite, all that shit. Well, the reason why I'm implying that sucks is, bro, when you break into tier 1, I want that to be the start of your journey. Those teams were almost cooked at that point. It's like we already grind ourselves to oblivion to get in tier 1. And then when we're in tier 1, yeah, the second we lose a bunch of games or someone's mental goes, it's just over because we just destroyed ourselves. And the amount of times teams have actually improved but just burned themselves out is crazy. Like the amount of stories like that are bonkers. That's not just a one-off that Ash has given. That's just the most recent one that you had the numbers for. In every 3 months, there's a team like that that's having all this crazy tier 2 success. And you just think like, yeah, but what do you get from it? I mean, it's even worse if, as you say, some of the tournaments aren't even real. That, by the way, is really alarming. There's another example of why, like, if you're Valve, can you just grow the fuck up and get someone who actually works in the Counter-Strike industry? Because remember, making the game Counter-Strike does not mean you work in the Counter-Strike esports industry. The esports industry is people like Messioso and that fucking Polish guy from ESL who know everything about how the rules work and how the tournaments work and and by the way, who the dodgy teams are that people know match fix all the games and who should be blacklisted and what anti-cheat to use and how to set up a fucking qualifier. Because I agree, that is actually bonkers, the idea that like you have to play a tournament because like your HLTV and or Valve ranking will be based on it, even though even if you win, you will never see any of the money. That is insane. That's insanity that people have to go forwards in that scenario. Then the whole buyout thing, I agree, that is mental. Because the reason why that's a brilliant example is the worst thing about that is how predatory that example is, the one that you're giving about Kakanito, right? Because the reason why that one's so stupid, Ash, is you have to ask yourself this. If you're the org and you don't sell him for 20k, what did you get out of him in those 2 days? Nothing. You didn't have a tournament to play. You don't have a major to go to. He doesn't have a tournament to play or a major to go. You gain nothing by not letting him go. Well, all you're basically doing is you're just saying, hey, because I know you're desperate, fuck you, just pay me 20k. Like, if we all do that, by the way, that is like, I'm not saying you have to, with rival teams, be nice to them, but that is so predatory. It's like you just essentially said, unless I get something out of it, fuck everyone in this equation. Like you, because remember, they gain nothing by not selling him. In the other analogy, right? If you just said they had 6 months left, Ash, maybe in 6 months they can do something with him. Maybe there's still added value for them. Maybe they can sell him to someone else. There's another thing. In 2 days, they haven't got time to go to another bidder and go, well, if you don't pay the 20k, he'll pay it. It's like, there's no other bidder. If he either comes with us now for hopefully free or a tiny fee, or he just doesn't play and we all lose. And they just went, well, yeah, we all lose then. It's like, bro, we can't have a community if we're going to do that. Like, we can't have a scene like that. Like, that's so cynical an approach. And by the way, that's like just a recent example. People know some of those stories in the Brazilian scene where they've done the same thing. I want to really sit some of those Brazilian orgs down and go, right, explain to me, Clan 1, how you keeping fucking TRK for like 3 extra years. What did you get out of that? Can you explain to me? Can you show me what results you turned that into and how you having, it was a good player for you, was awesome. Because as far as I can tell, all you did is you could have got him for like, let's say 30k. And instead you said 60k or nothing. And then you just got nothing. Like, wasn't that bad for everyone? Even if your team was good, wouldn't you? Bro, back then you could have used that 60k and probably done a lot with your org. Like, that might have actually helped like the finances soared. So that one's a bad one. On the donk one, that's actually just fucking hilarious because the joke there would be the simple way, the secret tip that doctors hate that I'm going to reveal on the internet is the easiest way to coach is just watch any demo where someone did well against donk and just do a slightly worse version of that and you could probably still win. So in a way they've helped you coach there, but obviously that's a joke. That doesn't even work. The The reason I hate that, by the way, is I have this line that I actually say in League of Legends that I'll do a similar version of. In League of Legends, right, there was a mega Spanish mid laner back in the day in Europe called HooXi who played for Fnatic. And he actually was like League of Legends equivalent to HooXi, where if you know all those stories I always tell that make HooXi sound like a legend, where it's real, he really would be in the nightclub till like 4 a.m. They'd be like, I'd better get a few of the Zs. That's on his. They would go home, like go into bed, for like a 90-minute nap, wake up like, let us start the pistol round, and then like win the game and like win that tournament, right? Those sound dope because they make him sound like some like fucking character of like a Tarantino movie or something. He just sounds like a baller. But I always used to say, right, so HooXi was like that. He could do the same thing. He could fuck around the whole split in LCS. And then what he'd do is in the playoffs, he'd just sort of like get his shit together right before the match. And then he'd like be awesome in the playoff and carry the match. And I always used to say though, there should be a rule in European teams though. They should almost have like a banner. You know, when you go like into Anfield or where they have that thing of like, you'll never walk alone. There should be a thing like that when you walk in the practice room in League of Legends that says, you ain't HooXi. Because do you know how many skilled players then thought they could do that and could fuck around and be like, but I'm so skilled though. And then what would happen is they'd turn up and they'd lose that playoff game. And I'd go, bro, the reason it worked is the funny part about the HooXi HooXi story is that they win at the end of it. It's not a funny story if it's like, I was out last night, I was pissed out my mind. Never got any sleep. And you know what? I was shit in the game. It's like, what? For one, what's the gag? And then two, why is that a good thing? So similarly, right, there needs to be a similar thing for any player under the age of 20. You aren't donk. Like, you are aware. Like, it's not even debatable. It's not even like, but I could be. No. You have to understand, like, the eye test alone, like, I could see 100 POVs with no nameplate on it. I'd be like, that's donk. That one there. Like, all of the same. But, like, you know that fucking scene out of the Matrix Reloaded or whatever it was, where it was like the architect with all those screens. I could see all those screens, and I'd instantly, that one's donk right there. Like, there wouldn't even be any confusion. Like, none of you can do that. None of you can mechanically. So the idea they try and play like that is actually cancer, because I even think much like Simple when he came to his prime. Donk does things for normal players that are absolutely really bad players, but he's just so good they're good players for him. And by the way, I can only imagine us trying to explain that to players. Like, no, but because you aren't him, that is a right play for him. For you, it's a terrible play. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And you've actually ruined our T-side here. Like, I can't even imagine trying to break through on that one. That's also so childish. Because, like, listen, I get when someone's, like, 11, if they're like, I want to be like Ronaldo. Like, no one who's actually entering a pro team's like, I'm just going to play like Ronaldo, coach. Like, even though I'm in the Premiership now, I'm just going to do what? You know that Porto goal? Fuck it, 40 yards out. Oh, did I miss? Oh, he got it in the top corner. We did that. Like, that would be insane. You'd fire that guy immediately. You'd never have him. Then on the thing where you said about the streamers, that is actually hilarious, because if you don't know, when you do those tournaments, it's similar like you're saying for the players, for the streamer. Bro, when they work those online tournaments, it's just a whole day. That's just all they're doing is doing that game. And if you knew that, you probably know this, if you knew the pay, it is criminal. Bro, there are people doing best of threes for, like, I'm not joking, guys, for like $20. Like, unless they actually live in a third world country, which I'm going to guess they don't since they have a PC and they're in Europe doing the event, how could they ever actually make a living doing those games? Like, they're almost actually like losing. Whoever's paying for their rent and electricity is almost just funding them to cast that online best of three. Like, that's insane. Like, because if people don't know, what's crazy, like a lot of industries, is the top talent get paid loads of money, but the drop off, as you're saying, to even tier 2 casting is mental, bro. They're actually on, unironically, like a 20th of the money for the match. Like, but they're not a 20th as good. That's the worst part. They're even all right at their job. And then lastly, on the thing you said about the style, that is actually just absolute cancer as well. I actually do hate that so much, because you nailed it there. When people do that thing where they, like, the best example is like Bleed. They go, Kassad got all these tier 1 players like Jacob and Nexa and Nork, and he can't even win against some team I've never heard of. It's like, bro, have you seen who else doesn't win against that team? It's everyone. Like, I agree with you, mate. The worst thing about tier 2 is it's like you're just playing against a random opponent. So the opponent could be really awesome. They could be really bad. But you don't have any info. There's a million of them. There's not even like a limited amount. Remember, the other thing about tier 1 people always miss, bro. There's only about like 10, 15 teams in tier 1. So once you've played them loads of times, every time you play them, you have a sense of what they're going to do, how they're going to play, and it makes sense. Some of these games don't make sense. And by the way, some of the bad tier 2 teams just have people who have FPL aim and no proper strats. I can't even imagine. Like, what are you learning from that? Because here's what I would say as a final point. I'll throw it back to to you, Ash, on this one, is the reason why I agree with you, it's insane that you get stuck in tier 2 because of this, is because I think a fan naively, like I just said about that bleed example, they think you're in tier 2 because you can't beat insert like Eternal Fire or something, right? No. The joke is you'd have a way better chance against Eternal Fire. You can't beat 50 teams we'll never heard of and never will hear of. That's the real problem. You have to somehow beat a random assortment of teams and never lose to them to get into the tier 1 scenario. They think you're just not beating the top. It's actually all the teams below that are harder to beat in a weird way, right?
Yeah, I think the tier 1s are still, I mean, they're obviously hard to beat because they've got the good players, but I would much rather play against the tier 1 teams where I know what they're doing than these teams I have no idea what they're doing. And so and the thing is, well, the skill level so now is so high, everyone can aim. Yes. Everyone can aim, and they're throwing out these ridiculous strats and the wide peaks. And the wide peaks, you don't even have a chance to kill them at the moment with the way CS2 is, which I'm going to come to on later anyway, the state of the game, which I hate. And it's kind of making it all worse, the way MR12 as well. And what are you meant to do? How are you meant to win this game 8 out of 10 times anymore? It's almost out of your hands sometimes. You have a bad start, game over. Well, unlucky, the MR12, you're 5-0 down, you've got no chance anyway. I think it's just a mess.
Also, I do like the meme that you did work on there. Like, if you actually were still in tier 1, they should do an ESL skit like that, where the joke is the reason why GamerLegion was so dope at Blast Paris is because by Blast Paris' second Swiss phase, everyone was like, what the fuck is this? We're all trapped in some nightmare of tier 2 with all players we've never heard of. You were like, we were born in a mode. Imma has never even played in a tier 1 line. Like, it was actually insane. That worked, though, it was. By the way, one thing I should ask you, since we've got you here now, just because you're captive in this moment, is, bro, here's the thing no one ever asks you, Ash. They probably say stupid things. Oh, great job getting to the final. Oh my God, what a great run. What they don't ask you is this is why I'm an interviewer who's a fucking goat, mate. You know what? The actual one question no one's asked you is this. Bro, I bet you have gone to sleep so many fucking times. Your head hits that pillow and you're just thinking, we almost won that nuke. What happens on map 3? That's the real question, right? Because no, everyone just goes, oh, but good job getting there. Bro, you almost won that nuke game and it would have been the 3rd map. And I'll tell you what, that would have been very spicy right then. I would love to see that, right?
I mean, the thing that I hate about this is that if we played nuke first, we would have got battered because our nuke was horrible. We didn't play it a single time. We knew if anyone plays us on nuke, we're in big trouble, right? The whole tournament. And we knew overpass, we were probably the best in the world at overpass. I think we won like 10 in a row or something. Every single map was amazing for us. We played the first map and it was just that we were playing on stage and everyone wants us to lose. Yeah. And for the first time, and you're taking it in. It takes you an hour to take it in. And then after that, it's basically like an even battle after that, right? I think we lost every close duel possible. If you watch that game, you're like, how did you only win 3 rounds on T-side? It was...
Oh, no, the amount of 1v1s was mental, of course.
Yeah, Apex on a 1v1 because both people ran out of bullets and he was killed with USP, and it was a complete mess. And if the maps were the other way around, we nearly won a nuke, and we just couldn't beat anyone on nuke in practice. We couldn't beat anyone on nuke in officials, and we nearly won nuke. I think if it was the other way around, we'd have won an overpass potentially. Right. And the 3rd map, we'd have been locked in. We'd have been like, yep, we're going to win this with the momentum from Heroic. And we could have had like an epic finale 3rd map. But unfortunately, because we had to play our map first and we got battered on it, I don't think we really had the belief that we were going to win it back after that. And we were every possible lose condition we had was kind of there at that point. ZywOo was popping off.
Oh, it was,
Nuke was just a disaster on T-side. We couldn't get going. I mean, at least Imma showed up on that map and he really showed like it wasn't a fluke and he is like a really insanely good player. But it was, I still have such what ifs. What if the map pool was the other way around and we had a chance? What if they picked any other map other than nuke? Because we had no idea what they were going to pick either because their map pool was so strong. And they made a great choice in it. And yeah, it's a what if. Maybe I'll never get another chance again. But
I think this is the moment, Battye, right? It just crystallised. I actually am a ZywOo here because I just realised, actually, if I had a time machine, I wouldn't go and refix loads of great things this year. I'd just go and try and make ZywOo lose the one major he won. I'd just go, fucking, why not? Like, just go back, fix up the veto, sign the bracket. I'm a hater. I've just realised that, it's all good. I've accepted it. It's all,
Can he just get some harder brackets for
I know,
sake?
come on.
What is this EPL bracket that they're giving him right now? What's that Cologne bracket that he got? Yeah.
No, the joke is that's why he's the chosen one. Yeah, the whole thing's fucking scripted for him. What is this shit? It's like some WWE shit where the guy just like gives you an easy win. You're like, can I actually see the best guy win? I know.
M80 in the quarterfinals, is it? Like, what is this going on right now? Yeah, okay.
And the worst thing is, if you don't know how bad ZywOo stands are, bro, even if they lose in that semi-final Maui, they'll go, he was top 4 EPL. It's like, oh, I hate you guys so much. I hate everything about you.
I think the one thing about you'll never hear any fan say it more than ZywOo fans is you can only beat the people that are in front of you. That is the ultimate line from them. They love that one.
Yeah.
I just needlessly had to just get some Zywoo shade in, though. Of course,
it's all good.
As per
Listen. Why break the habit of a lifetime? So right, okay. Maui, it's obviously very topical. What is your bad point?
Yeah, my bad point kind of factors into the hesitations that I had for my good point, because obviously I'm a fan that cadiaN is now on Astralis because I think that the calling's going to get better. My bad point is just that this could have been HooXi, and I feel like in a lot of ways it should have been HooXi. I was rooting for the HooXi move towards Astralis as well, and I did want to see him playing in for the roles. And I know that I feel like 1-for-1 Stairs roles on the team probably would have fit HooXi's a little bit better, but so far I've seen more from Stair as an individual than Bro.
Oh, of course.
So I would have been okay with HooXi coming in for either, honestly. Depends on what they really wanted. I probably would have kept Stair myself, and I'm glad that they kept him on the roster instead of Bro. But at the same time, I just feel like HooXi would have been the better replacement than cadiaN, and for Astralis to miss that opportunity again is still ridiculous to me, because I think that HooXi is actually a really solid caller. I'm not going to say that he's fantastic, but I think that he was definitely above average for tier 1 callers in general. I feel like he knew how he wanted to use his pieces. I felt like he knew the style that he wanted, and I think that the main thing that I loved about HooXi's calling above all else is that he was, to me, one of the most pragmatic leaders, where he didn't overcomplicate things, where he didn't have to try to fake people out all the time. That if he knew he had banana control and he had NiKo, Hunter, and MonteCristo ready to go in, you guys should just exec B and go into B. Like, they never needed to do a re-clear bracket or anything like that. If JKS was on the other side of the map, that's fine. He's going to be able to stop rotations, but in a 4-on-4, even a 4-on-5, just exec B. And I feel like that's something that so many IGLs, they try to do a little bit more, and I feel like the phrase of overcooking is something that comes up a lot now, where if you're in the mid-round with a couple of options, you have one that's directly in front of you that's already a good option. Just take the good option and try to find the perfect option by perhaps introducing new uncertainties into the round, as many in-game leaders in tier 1 do. A lot of in-game leaders, Device himself actually would just kind of try to do a little bit too much sometimes, try to find this perfect way to use all your chess pieces. But in many ways, HooXi was playing checkers, but he was damn good at it. And so I wish that HooXi would have actually been the in-game leader for Astralis.
That's a skit right there, by the way. It's like, instead of like, obviously you have like Glaive playing chess back on and so on. Then HooXi's playing checkers, but the joke is like, checkers is enough. If you got MonteCristo, NiKo,
if you're really good at checkers, you don't need to play chess.
No, exactly.
You know? Like, just keep winning at checkers. It's fine.
I love it. Okay. What do you think, Ash? HooXi doesn't have a team. By the way, you don't have to be that he has to join Astralis, but do you think he should be on a team right now? I mean, I will say, Ash, a lot of people are going to miss this context, but I'm purposely going to set it up here. Famously, supposedly, he turned down GamerLegion, didn't he? Like, he could have gone the opposite way on the move, right? So that in itself implies it's not really that no team wants him. He's maybe doing a JKS and he wants a top team again, right? What would you say on this whole topic? Presumably you wanted him, right? You were going to try and get him.
Yeah. I mean, obviously with our team, we lost Snacks, right? And we had a huge age disbalance, I think, kind of, where we're looking at a really young team. Like, do we want to turn into Academy? We had two options, ETR, who have been a big admirer for a long time, and HooXi, and I thought this could be the guy. Maybe he's a leadership guy. Seems like he has a lot of leadership qualities. He wants to help the team win, and I could see that the way Copenhagen Flames played, they had a clear style. They wanted to walk out together, kill people, trade each other, really trade-based game, and then went to G2, and I could see he was trying to at least play around the individuals they had, and he wasn't just bringing the Flames way, he was kind of play around it, and I liked that as well. I see him hyping MonteCristo, and I thought, yeah, this could be a guy that could be really good, and he just didn't want to talk to us. I thought I had a way I could sell it. I have massive belief in the young players we have, and I thought if he wants to come in, I can maybe see if he's interested, see if he's the right guy, but he just wasn't interested in talking. I think it's just I felt he was looking for an opportunity like this, like Liquid maybe at the time before cadiaN was there.
Sure.
So I'm just kind of a bit worried that he's just going to miss out now, and I don't really know where he goes, because I think he does have a lot of value, and his stock is very low, and to us, when people's stock is very low, this is usually a great time to go and get him cheap, right? And build a team around him. So I'm worried for him. I also would, as well, it feels like, I don't know if it's just they want to talk about him, but Stair, it feels like they talk about Stair like he's the next big thing. He's such a big talent. And then why isn't that not another reason to bring HooXi in, someone who's selfless, who's going to make the stars kind of shine out a bit? Because now I feel like cadiaN's coming in. Is cadiaN going to play all the anchor positions? Is cadiaN going to go in first for Stair somewhere? Or are they just going to...
I'll believe it when I see it, put it that way. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, but even if he says he's going to do it, at least you know HooXi will do it. You don't know if cadiaN will do it. And the way cadiaN used to play before, like, I am a big cadiaN fan, by the way. cadiaN was definitely baiting a lot of times. He had so many rounds where he would just sell the team kind of on T side to plant the bomb and win the round, and you win the round quite a lot of times. To be fair, it's pretty good at it. I just find it hard to have that mentality shift. You're going to go into a rifler, you're going to a team that doesn't like you apparently as well, and you big org that doesn't, the fans don't want to be there, and you're going to be selfless as well and change this, because mostly AWPer mentality is just they've been spoiled their whole lives, right? That whenever they want to do something, they say, your coach and everyone's saying, guys, go do this, what you want, do this, or drop me off, do whatever you want all the time. And whenever they play T side, they're always going at their own speed. They're saying, I want to do this when we're doing this default. Oh, okay, fine, go do it. CT side, they're always deciding where they want to go. And when it's like you're playing 4 guys and 1 superstar when you have an AWPer all the time. Do what you want, but then when you try and put him in a rush, they don't know how to rush. Nearly every AWPer I've ever played with, you put them in a rush, they're going to take some random path and they don't understand they need to jump out, run out. You put them in set strats and they're always going to throw the nades every time. And they're never going first. And now he's just gonna learn all this on the fly. Like I'm not saying he's incapable of learning it, but every instinct for him from being a top tier pro for so many years, he's gonna say, I'm doing the wrong thing. This isn't my game. This isn't me. I don't like it. I think they could have got more out there if they really do believe in him like this. And now I think someone's going to get sold on this team. And you bring cadiaN in, you're obviously not going to take him out straight away. They're probably going to stairs just in trouble. And my bad point, I think, would be is Astralis is that they are churning young players out like they're nothing all the time, and they're putting players in their academy. All their players in their academy seem to think that Astralis, I want to go to Astralis. No one else. I'll turn everyone else down, every single offer. I won't even speak to them. Go into Astralis while you're in the bin. Never see you ever again. People like Buzz, showing a lot of talent. Throw him in the bin, stick him on the bench. He's stuck forever. He can't get out. Give him no chance. So many other people like this, right? And now, if he's as good as they say he is, he's going to have to be unbelievable, to be honest. Or cadiaN's going to have to really change his game to get the best out of him. I just don't really see it, to be honest. I'd rather seen HooXi in this team, and now I'm also worried about HooXi. He seems like a nice guy and everything. And I think I just don't know what his next move is. I couldn't even theorize what it is.
No, what's funny is, as you were saying that, I pulled it up. Bro, he's done. Because if you have a look, I'm not exaggerating, if Astralis isn't doing it and they've now signed cadiaN, so they're not, tell me another top 20 team that's signing HooXi. Because by the way, Falcons ain't doing it. Like, there's none. Like, Liquid's already got twists. Like, I'm not joking. If you look at the whole top 20 guys, they're either teams that he can't join because like Russian or Turkish or something, or there's just no teams left. Like, remember, if you're not going to join GamerLegion, I'm sorry, I'm just going to speculate here. I don't think he also wants to join, like, the NIPs and the Fnacs of the world. So, if you think there's a team better than that, here's the difference, bro. Unfortunately, maybe JKS has warped everyone's mind because JKS has done this twice now. He sat around after Call, and then he got into fucking G2 somehow, and then he sat around after G2 and he got into Team Liquid. That is extremely rare that's ever going to happen, guys. And I actually think personally that the difference is this. With JKS, the one thing he had going for him is because he got benched so early in CS2, we all have it in our brains when he was playing awesome and winning all those tournaments and doing all those clutches. You can even think of like a Mirage JKS clutch in your brain and you immediately start seeing him winning on the B site, right? You think instead of HooXi, first of all, everyone's been flaming HooXi all of this year. No one thinks highly of him. And then secondly, because you're in IGL, we don't have the same memories. We have memories of NiKo doing things and MonteCristo doing things. So unfortunately, if you're in IGL, I think it's really dangerous to sit on the bench for 6 months. Like, you will just be forgotten, bro. If no one wants you now, no one's going to want you in 6 months. Like, I'm even trying to think of some of these teams, like, who would even as a fallback get you? I think the only one I can vaguely come to is maybe there's a world where, like, Heroic decides Kixum wasn't it, and then Swords is, like, gets HooXi or so. That's about the only, like, reach angle I can even think. Aside from that, there's no teams. There's no one you could join. And then I also agree, right, the reason why it's actually a little bit harsh what happened to HooXi in G2 is when everyone gave him his credit in G2, it was in a way that was backhanded. Everyone went like, well, you're playing a loose style, but you should because you got all the fraggers. But I actually agree. He played way more structure in Copenhagen Flames, but he obviously couldn't do that in G2. And actually, that is, in my opinion, the downfall of HooXi in G2. I mean, everyone's now heard that story, that if they hadn't won last Cologne last year, they would have just fired him last year, like a year ago, basically. And the reason why is obvious, because I'll tell you the worst thing. Think about the conversation I had earlier about superstar players in the era before they were molded by academies and coaches. Superstar players have outrageous thoughts. Like, here's the problem if you're HooXi. In the short term, here's how you win with NiKo and MonteCristo and players like that. You come in and you don't say, I'm the genius, listen to me, everyone do what I say. You go, oh no, actually some of your ideas are good and we're going to integrate that. And hey, you know what, great idea, NiKo, that was a great call you made there. Hunter, you're making excellent calls, mate, keep doing it. Here's the problem with doing that. In the short term, that'll work if you win. In the long term, I'll tell you what those players will do. One day they'll be having that beer when you're not there and they'll go, why actually do we need that HooXi guy. Doesn't he just sort of do all our ideas anyway? And actually, you end up losing off that. Here's what the genius player does, like a cadiaN. They get you to think that their idea was your idea, but they make sure that when it then doesn't work and you correct them, you know, oh shit, it was actually his idea. And you only know later, like, oh, he was. That's why people like Twists later on get more and more and more complimentary on people like cadiaN. Whereas you notice with some of these other IGLs, it feels like the opposite. They have a first couple of months that are good, and then it's diminishing returns, and the players just lose faith in them. And at the end, they just sort of like bring anyone in except this guy, basically. So I think that's outrageous, because I do think it's funny. I was speaking against HooXi because people wanted him to be in like a top 3 team in the world. The idea now we can't be in any top 10 team. Like, we've gone too far the other way now, you idiots. Like, I'll just say this myself. I purposely kept it because we did the cadiaN thing before. I think HooXi is a way more appropriate IGL for Astralis than fucking cadiaN. 1, he has none of that bollocks with the rolls. 2, I actually think, if anything, surely device you want structure. I would even say to HooXi, fuck G2 HooXi. I want Copenhagen Flames HooXi, mate. Let's bring that guy in. Let's work on this. Also, you've got Rugger. By the way, I know Rugger wants to be like a tactical coach and do like all like. You don't want like. I also think the roles are a nightmare. Like, I agree with you. It's why I kept saying on shows, Maui, you notice, like, if they bring, because I thought it was HooXi they bring in. I kept saying, I think if you do role for role, they'll just kick Stare, even though he's obviously more talented, because they'll think Bro can be like all the shitter roles, basically. Instead, they've kept him. But I as you said, here's the obvious analogy. My fear now is this, that they're going to do to Stare what they did to Cello in Furia, which is you take a player who actually is good and you just say, you're now the new drop, enjoy your fucking life, mate. You're going to look shit for the next 6 months. Because the worst thing about that is not only do you ruin that player's game, but then at the end of it, he has to go to some shit team himself because no one believes he's good anymore. Whereas actually, if you think about it, like at the end of Imperial, bro, Cello was probably their best player. He was just like their best player. Like, he actually, like, at that time, if we'd have been doing that Makey Brazilian Super Team, he'd have been in it. We'd have had him in 2 stars, you know what I mean? Like, he was actually really good. So I'm so worried they're going to do that with Stare. I agree. If you actually look, unironically, take away expectations, he's probably had the most consistent performance in the whole fucking team. From Blame F being there to now, to the device era, to when HooXi, like, that guy actually just did his job the whole time. In fact, didn't he sometimes even do more than his job? Even sometimes he just carried the game, didn't he? He certainly wasn't like a superstar to me, but there's a reason why everyone was like, remember, the Astralis players themselves were bigging this guy up before he joined. They obviously knew he was a fucking talent in the Danish scene, so I don't get it, mate. It's just such a weird move to me. And then, yeah, the idea that now HooXi is just sat playing for nobody. Oh, that's just whack.
I think that's the thing I hate the most. Sorry, is just advice I always give is players, if you get benched, never stay on the bench if you can. Try and get off it, because when I'm looking at it as a coach, I'm thinking, why did you get benched? Are you still playing the game? You're only going to be worse now than when you came back. You're going to be falling off the meta the whole time. There's literally only downsides, and you're better getting off and proving yourself quickly than staying on that bench for nearly 99% of players. And for people like JKS, I guarantee people like me, I am not going to take the risk and go, let's go buy JKS for 200k, because I don't know if he even wants to play the game. Yeah. I don't know anything about him at all. I don't know if he's a big problem. I always assume all the negatives, because why is he benched? What's going on? Is he still playing the game anymore? Is he doing anything? I assume everything's no. He's probably demotivated. He probably doesn't want to play anymore. And this is why I say, do not stay on the bench. Get streaming straight away. Show people you want to play. Play Face It, because people can see you actually playing the game still.
Yes.
And show that you actually want to play. Because the number one problem for me, motivation. And I assume most of the time you're probably demotivated from getting benched.
Yes.
Get off the bench as fast as you can. I'd say that nearly every time.
By the way, surely the biggest example we can give to any active pro is, bro, this is happening to Simple now. You do know Simple's like the only player ever. Like, the joke is, I've seen Simple do so much shit. I think Simple could like go back in time and fix my parents' marriage. He could do anything. He was like the greatest player to ever play any game. So that if everyone now watches and they don't believe he can actually like even play like competent CS, that shows you what happens when you're out of sight and out of mind, bro. They forget about you. They forgot about Simple. That sounds like a fucking rap song, obviously, like you could do, but you know, whatever.
You just assume he's got worse, right? You assume whatever level he was at, he's probably got worse.
Oh, yeah, of course. You think about everyone, yeah.
The random Thorin lore cameo there about your.
I mean, that's actually a joke. I don't really have didn't have my parents. I thought it was a funny line, though, wasn't it? It was a good line.
Okay.
It was more like, you know, when they go, hey, I just flew in from Texas, but that's just a gag for the opening part of the stand-up comedy. You know, I didn't actually come in from Texas. I didn't fly even, and my arms aren't actually tired, believe it or not. So, you know.
Well, what I think HooXi needs to do is that he needs to stop surrounding himself, because I'm sure that he has a lot of close friends and even family that are telling him like, "Nah, you're too good for this team. You're too good for that team." It's like when any rapper or NBA player or like, just have that posse. That's
the entourage,
yes
right?
Man.
Sure.
It's like, the entourage, like the Kanye entourage. They're all just telling him that he's the greatest of all time, and he can do no wrong. And then he makes like poopity scoop, scoopity poop. And it's
by the way, Maui,
what are you doing right now?
Just because I know you appreciate Kanye for good and for ill, just almost the mania of it. I know, like me, you just vibe with it, right? Even though that should be the dark part. That screenshot that got leaked, I was almost crying, laughing. You know the one about the nitrous oxide.
I need the nitrous. Can I have the nitrous?
It's when he says to like his plug or his hookup for his drugs or whatever. He sort of says like, "Have you got any more like nitrous oxide gas?" And then the guy even like tries to do him a favor and says like, "Bro, like you got to be careful with that. Like if you take too much, like it like just like he explained like some health issues." And then Kanye just goes like, "Yeah, okay, but have you got the nitrous?" Like,
could I have the nitrous?
He doesn't even care though. I know, I love it. I just love it so much. I just think
that's HooXi right now. That's HooXi right now. Can I have the liquid spot?
Yeah, basically. But he's just delusional.
Can I have the liquid?
Exactly.
Can I have the liquid spot? Can I have the JKS?
What a
spot?
world. By the way, I actually think you even phrased this best. I mean, if we'd have known the story before, you could have made this HooXi didn't get to join Astralis. But I agree. It's actually that he's not on any team at all.
Yeah,
here's the other thing that sucks. Like, you know, the worst thing is if you think of the timing when he was benched, bro, you had a whole season to get it back together now. Like, look, let's say, by the way, let's say you actually joined GamerLegion with Ash here, right? First of all, I just said it at the beginning of the episode. They're not even like a total random team. People like Slend actually might be like a top 20 player in 2 years, bro. You would actually get all the credit when he rose up now. Look, you wouldn't from people who know the game like Ash, but to a fan, they'd be like, that guy was nobody before HooXi came. That would even work to your favour. So say, first of all, you'd have like a sleeper roster. And then secondly, even if it didn't work out, because this is the point that he was making there about don't bench yourself. Because you'd have been active for this season, win, lose or draw at the end of the season. Now if someone after the Shanghai Major was like, I want to change my IGL. Oh, wait, HooXi did not a bad job with that. Like, that's when you get hired. That's when you get actually the Liquid job. But I'll tell you what, if you sit on the bench, even if Liquid doesn't stick with Twist, they ain't coming to you in 6 months. You know what I mean? They're not going to fail the major and go, hey, remember that guy ages ago who played with me? It'll be like 6 months ago at that point in time. Like, you'll be forgotten by then, I'm telling you, bro. It's really sad.
The one thing that HooXi is praying for right now is that NiKo brings him to Falcons also. that he says, I need one guy with me. And they're going to be like, wait, okay, you want Hunter? No. You want MonteCristo? No. You want HooXi? Okay. That's the only way that I see him redeeming himself, getting onto a top 15, honestly.
By the way,
I don't see where else
here's the only thing, and I'm only saying this for a comedic effect, but the obvious joke there is, imagine when Kassad wakes up and sees HLTV.org that day, Maui. Like, wakes up, HooXi and NiKo to join Falcons. Sprays all of it. All right, I'm never talking to you again. Goodbye.
Yeah, no, NiKo's going to wake up on Twitter and he's just going to see you are blocked by Kassad. You're just like, he's going to try to go to his Twitter one day to DM him.
Okay, here's my bad point. And obviously on this one, you're all big boys. Put on your waders. Figure out what you're going to say. Don't touch the toxic waste. Don't get involved if you don't want to. Or do. Join in if you want to. It's fun. I'm going to say it, and I picked it as my bad point. I could have picked ugly, but I'm going to go bad. I'm just going to say it right now. The dupreeh in Falcons experiment failed. It wasn't even just not that good. It failed. Because remember, if you think role for role of who you were bringing him in for, you brought him in after Boros, right? He was here to be Boros / NiKo, because originally it would have been NiKo's spot, wouldn't it? You essentially said, and this is exactly why I hate sentimentalism in sports, by the way. What really happened, let's be real, is for whatever reason, Zonic sat around. He got that text, you up, from dupreeh, and he goes, oh, I remember the good times, dupreeh. Yeah, oh, sorry, I had to sort of like, marginalise you in Vitality because I had all those big French players that were superstars. Hey, what if we got back together and it was just like the old days? And it wasn't. There was like the first, month where it looked good. After that, he has not only, as you say in English, like withered on the vine. He looks way worse now. But secondly, think about how old this player is. This player is really old. He's had by the way, he's had some of the best longevity ever. He's had an amazing career. And now you've got this nightmare scenario where NiKo is coming after all. Well, here's the obvious problem. One, are we just booting this guy? Because I tell you what, if we boot him, it's going to be even worse than Vitality. Sure, he's going to be totally betrayed and heartbroken and what the fuck, and hey, I wasn't even that bad at it. But if you look role for role, obviously you're booting him. I mean, I would ask this. Who else are you booting and keeping him for? Like, I'll tell you what, I know everyone now who's a noob likes to go, I'd kick Madden. It's like, bro, have you ever seen what roles he has to play? That guy's a fucking soldier, mate. He just puts his hard hat on and goes to work, rain, shine, or fucking sleet or whatever. Like, I'm not kicking that guy and keeping dupreeh. He's not going to do his roles. So I genuinely think they've got themselves in a really sticky situation where you've got this sentimental past attachment between Zonic and Magus to dupreeh, where if this had no nameplate, bro, you kick that guy tomorrow and get another player. Or NiKo comes in, and that's who he replaces. But I actually think they're in a really sticky scenario. Do they stick with dupreeh and put him on a different spot? Does he somehow find again like a sort of like a raw entry role like he had in Vitality or so? Who the fuck knows at this point in time, especially because all the players are worse than Falcons now. So I think it's just, bear in mind, he was one of the greatest players to ever play CSGO. It's a really bad situation, I think, because it's an example of a player where I know people like me, you don't want to have to flame him. You want to say it's all the others and all the ones that didn't win the majors, but he is part of the problem at this point for me. So again, you choose how much you want to wade into this toxic mind. I'm okay, I live in it. Again, I was moulded by it and all that jazz. What do you think, Ice? What do you think about the dupreeh on Falcons angle?
If I think about the few things that's in Falcons, I haven't really watched Falcons to be honest.
Yeah,
and to be fair, that when we have played them, I was actually pretty impressed by the way that they're setting up. They're clearly not copying anyone. They try to be original.
Okay.
So I respect that. I don't know if it's the best approach, but I respect it. They try to have their own style. But I think, remember the Boros talk, and it seems like these guys are, 4 of them, they're all very opinionated. I don't know how much Bias is, and they're all very opinionated, right? And I think from what I know from Boros is a very quiet guy. He's not going to point out the problems and everything. And when things aren't going so well, which they haven't been, I think the individual performance has been really down. They probably have too many voices pointing out the problems, pointing fingers at each other. And this like dynamic in the team, it's really hard sometimes to not have someone who's just shutting up and being quiet, because I think 5 voices is too many.
Yes.
A lot of the time, it's usually the opposite, a bit quiet, and all you have 2 riflers maybe that aren't speaking much, or they don't have many opinions, and they're just like, oh, I just play the game, I don't really care, I don't think about it. But I think all 5 of them are thinking so hard, they're probably doing the opposite of what Tier 2 CS is, which is turn your brain off, trust your aim, go out and time feel your game. They're probably trying to think, oh, I need to make this time for this guy, make this time and throw this smoke out, throw this flash, play, perfect play. Oh, we lost this round because you did this step when you shouldn't have done this step. And this is probably the sort of conclusions they're coming with because they're so experienced. If they probably just turn their brain off, trusted their aim and played, they probably see some benefits to it. I'm not saying it's the way to fix this team, but I think that so many opinions can kill this thing, things. Sure. I actually think from what I've seen of dupreeh, he's actually looked pretty decent, and I think he's kind of his coincidence of being kind of good is kind of, you've seen Snappy drop off quite a lot. Some bias is kind of a bit random sometimes as well, and it's probably a little bit like not all him, just Boros and everything. So I think, I don't know what you do kind of to fix him. Obviously they're making changes already. It's honestly, sometimes you just need a few people focusing on the problems. You've got a very vocal coach, 5 people who are speaking all the time. This is the problem. This is the problem. I wouldn't like to be the guy picking whose decision is the right one out of everyone when they're arguing with each other. It's probably kind of difficult. And everyone is so experienced as well, right? They probably all have valid points, but how do you make it all in one direction? How do you get everyone on the same page when it's like that?
By the way,
really
a point you're also making is something I do feel like a lot of casual fans miss about pro teams. Sometimes when you have those like supportive players that have the bad stats, people go, why don't they just kick him? It's like, believe it or not, sometimes a positive is they have no ego. They're not the guy ever like overruling someone. They just do what they're told. And sometimes actually having one less voice can be good. I know everyone thinks of the teams that don't have enough comms and they want more. You don't want 5 people talking all the time. That's actually a nightmare. That's why I've told that story famously. You know, Maui, you were there in the fucking green room. When we used to hear those OG voice comms and it was like Alexi B couldn't fucking talk because Valde was too busy arguing with MBK, and then fucking randomly, I don't know, Issa would just have his opinion. It's like, bro, can we let the IGL talk in? Like he can't even get any bandwidth there.
Right. The fact that everybody, we saw the disconnect obviously when Vitality first brought in the Danish duo also, and so them trying to meld the French style with the Danish style. And the thing is that despite the fact that Snappy is Danish, he didn't call like Glaive. He never called like him. It was a very different type of Danish style. The only thing that they had in common is that they were both good at nuke, but they played completely different ways. Snappy liked explosive plays towards the A-bomb site. Glaive liked to bleed the whole map out. And so with dupreeh coming on the lineup, I feel like I'm glad that you bring it up, because I feel like the community sentiment has not caught up with the reality that dupreeh is performing underneath what he should be. Because I say that right now, if you were to bring in one player or take out one player that is for NiKo, who is that person? I did think that it was actually Modern for a while, and I'm actually glad you bring this up, because lately I have been feeling like dupreeh has been pretty lame. He's been pretty much underperforming. Modern's roles are a little bit harder, and so even if his rating might.
But this way, wouldn't you agree, Maui? I'll give it to you if you disagree. You can disagree. If I had to pick someone whose roles would be like the star rifler, it's dupreeh's roles in this team, isn't it? Like, wouldn't you pick him? It's like he should have more production.
He should. He should. It's kind of deviate. It's mostly dupreeh has star roles. I think Modern has a couple. Like Modern gets to play connector on Mirage, for example. So that's one where I think of, and I always think of like that's enough. Where you usually are put it. But you also, a lot of teams also put it as the short guy, and dupreeh plays short. So it's kind of like either or would be fine to slot NiKo in for one of those. So I'm not really stuck with an idea right now with who is out when NiKo comes in. Is it Modern? Is it dupreeh? And I feel like the other aspect that you guys have thankfully brought up is also, I think dupreeh has a lot of ideas of how he wants to play the game, whereas Modern to me can be a bit more, he can be a specialist in some of those roles that he's put in by Snappy. He knows how Snappy's system wants to be run. He's actually, in terms of rating, they're very similar overall between dupreeh and Modern, and I feel like because dupreeh has actually done so well earlier this year with Preezy playing against kind of like tier 2/tier 3 teams, he's kind of has this rating boost, and if you just kind of click his name, it looks like he's really good, but he really does fall off once he plays some of the better teams in the world. And I feel like the whole him being older argument, man, they're all old on Falcons. Like, let's not get it mistaken. It's not like Modern's like a young budding talent either or anything, but he is younger. He has a lot more to prove, and he knows how to play under Snappy system. And so for a few of those sort of qualifiers, I would actually now shift it towards being a bit of a split. And I would just say that it's not an envious position to say, do we want to take out dupreeh or Modern for NiKo? Because to me, it's got to be one of them. If it's a 1-for-1 replacement, it has to be one of those two. And now the conversation is very open for me between those.
Okay, let's go on. The last segment is the ugly segment, obviously. So you queued it up earlier. What is your third epic rant about CM? Go on. By the way, it seems like I timed this episode perfectly. You had all this shit just bubbling under the surface. Now you get it. So come on, what is your ugly point?
I'm always raging. Don't worry about that. I have something on my mind. My point is the state of the game in Pro CS. And like I said earlier, I'm not a big Valve fan right now. Of how the WIG game's looking. So I think the main one that's annoying me at the moment is MR12. I just don't think it works. I think in casual, you want to play a game, MR12 is the best change that Counter-Strike has made. It's really fun. You can go and play and you're out of the game in no time, you're queuing again. In MR12, I genuinely believe there is multiple games where the best team is not winning the game because the good stats matter too much. Pistols, they matter more. And I just find that the argument that, statistically, pistols don't matter so much now. You have to be so much better now to win a game when you don't win with pistols. And this is just the better teams winning a lot of times. This is why you see teams, when they lose pistol, they lose the first buy round, they just get blown out. And it could be, this team, why you're usually amazing on Vertigo. Why did you lose 13-3? Well, we had a terrible start and the game was 7-0 and it was over. It's just basically over at that point. They just win a couple of close rounds. You win one, you get reset again. You're on eco 4 times and a half in 12 rounds. It's a huge proportion of the game. Your opper's never buying an AWP because you can't afford it and it makes no sense. You don't get a feel. You never get to adapt because you're not getting into the game. In Counter-Strike, in CSGO, we had so many games, even at the major, we'd be 0-7 down with a terrible... If you went through our pistol stats, our first buy round stats, horrendous. But we were winning the game because we were significantly better in all of our games, no matter who we were playing against. We were winning legit. We were 0-7 down. We were adjusting. We were clawing rounds back. We were getting 8-7 halves, we were getting 7-8 halves, we were getting 9-6 halves, and then from that you get the pistol, you win momentum, or you at least you've turned the game on its head a bit, right? Now it's like you're 0-5 down on T-side Anubis. Well, statistically you've already lost the game nearly all the time. If you don't have a flawless half, 7-5 isn't even good at this point. And well done, you lost the first, you got out prepped in the first buy round, you lost the pistol, you lost a close round. You're almost out of the game, and you're meant to be a great Anubis team. Well, now you're a shit Anubis team apparently because you lost it. And I think in CSGO, this didn't hurt you so much. You don't get to adapt. And like you said earlier, I don't remember who it was, they said Snappy, for example, great at adapting. Now you don't adapt. Teams are just running set rounds over and over and over because you try to steal as many rounds as you can as fast as possible. Before, you'd have a bank around. You'd be like, we saved this for later in the half. And when they break us, we break them back straight away. And now it's great. You just get it out there, win the round, and say, thank you very much. We need to get 6 as fast as possible. This combines everything because the map pool is absolutely terrible. And it's not just terrible because the maps are boring. It's because I consider now Mirage, Anubis, Vertigo, and Ancient as pug maps, the way people are playing it, especially in Tier 2 CS. Like, Dust 2 has become the tactical map now. Yes. This is the state of the game we're at, where the most tactical map is Dust 2. Nuke has been a mess for 2 years.
By the way, notice how the two teams that everyone memed, but it was real. The two teams that instantly fell off in Tier 1 when an overpass went out was VP and Astralis, because they were trying to play like tacticals. Dude, immediately they got like half as good, it felt like.
And us.
No, yeah, you were overpass too. Yeah, true. No, you were the famous Tier 2 ones. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And yeah, but like I said, Nuke has been a mess for so long. But at least I can say like it's organized chaos. It's a bit smart. You're manipulating smokes. You got one guy lurking, 3 guys playing. It's hard to like play it. And Inferno with the utility, it just doesn't work that well. Like it's still fine, but it just doesn't work that well. And I think now, to find consistency, you have to find control, and to find control in like 80% of these 80% of these teams on these maps, it's like impossible nearly. And I think it's kind of reflecting. You're seeing the constant upsets. You're seeing absolute blowout games. Yes. We see it in practice, by the way, all the time. We are losing 13-2, and the game is 13-11. We're an absolute smash. But in the official, we lost the game at 13-2. The game was over. They were better than us. We had no chance. We're terrible. They're great. What happened to this team? They fell off. This is just a side effect of MR12 being terrible. And I think now that it's giving me maximum respect for the MOUZ Sports, the Spirits, the Navis, because they are going through MR12 and a terrible map pool. They're going through boosts being broken, sounds being completely broken for some reason. You can't hear people running above you sometimes. There's no steps at all. Wow. The models are like Michael Jackson peeking you or Cristiano Ronaldo doing step overs everywhere you go. Everyone's getting wide peak. The legs are sambering everywhere you go, and you're thrown off by half the stuff that's happening. Your AWPers aren't buying AWPs because what's the point? They're getting peaked and one tapped, and when they do get economy, that's the only round they get to play, and they're getting pre-fired. They don't have a chance. The teams are crashing all the time. We played a game the other day. We were in a 2v1. One of our players crashed. His model stayed there, and then we won the 1v1 because he shot the model, thinking it was the last guy. And we traded the model. And sometimes the model doesn't stay there, so you've got no idea if it's going to stay. The FPS, even on the best PCs, is dropping all the time. The executes come in. It feels terrible. If you have 2 monitors on at home, you alt tab. Well, good luck if your game's going to crash or not, because half the time it is going to, and sometimes it isn't. Yeah. The underdogs are just. I just can't think how you're meant to find consistency with all these things combined, especially for the players. Like, how the hell are the players? They're crashing mid officials regularly. They're playing with low FPS. They're playing people swinging that don't have a chance to shoot. They're playing maps where they're getting smoke spammed and all this other crap. MR12, they're playing half the rounds on eco. How is MONECRIsto consistent? How is Don consistent? These guys, like, maximum respect to these guys, because the game feels terrible when you get swung and wide peaked and you think, what was my mistake that round? Well, the other guy swung and just abused the game and the peakers advantage, and you literally didn't have a chance. Like, you genuinely didn't have a chance, and a mediocre player can do this if they're having a good day, and there's nothing you can do about it. I think the only thing I can kind of say I like is the smoke mechanic, the HE combo stuff. I think that's really nice, but nothing right now is refreshing for me. It's the map pool is a mess, and instead of having new things coming in, we have bugs that just aren't being fixed. And you can say to me, like, ashhh, white out the complaining. No one's going to give a shit if I complain. Like, CSGO aren't going to see it if I complain. Not just care if I'm saying Joel's cheating and he's getting away with it. No one cares. We just have to deal with it. So I say maximum respect. I understand entirely now. I am not down on MOUZ Sports at all, by the way, them bombing out and EPL. I think they've just focused so hard on the playoffs that they've just forgotten about the basics, and they'll fix this out the same way Spirit had a dip and they'll come back, and they've been back again. Navi had a dip and everyone was down on them and they're back again. This is just the state of the game now. How on earth are you meant to be consistent when the game is inconsistent and the game is broken and the maps are terrible? So respect to all those guys. We're going through hell with it. I'm trying to convince my players, guys, maybe you're not terrible that we lost this game. It's just the way the game is.
They're just focusing all their resources in deadlock. So that's kind of what's happening right now. I feel like ever since that game really started doing well, and I'll say first and foremost, I like deadlock a lot, but I also know that with the people have kind of, I don't know what people do or don't know about the organizational structure at Valve anymore, whether it has that flat structure where people can choose, but it is without a doubt that they have spent more time and resources on Dota, which gets less players, by the way, and also doesn't even make them that much anymore, given what just happened with their compendium, how it's like the lowest
that's fuck all money now, yeah.
Yeah, it's the lowest that the TI has actually had for a prize pool since 2012, I'm pretty sure, or 2013. So it's the first time ever since compendiums have been introduced that it's been this low. That it's actually even the very first year they had them. So they're not even necessarily making more from these other games. Like, we know that they're making hundreds of millions from people opening cases to this day, and for whatever reason they're like, that is printing us money. And I'm pretty sure that the economists at Valve are just like, why would you even work on this game? People are still going to open cases because the skin economy is as big as it is. And I've brought up the take before on Hot Take Point Made that skins are the worst thing to happen to this game, because they just know if you're just purely thinking from an economic perspective, what is the incentive if you're Valve if people will still open cases and you don't have to work on the game? I just don't know what it is, but they know they have to work on deadlock. They're trying to make that a game, and they're trying to make a model in terms of making money on it. So all of these issues that you brought up, they're incredibly valid. God, there was even other ones that I wanted to bring up too, like I guess the jump bug and everything like that. Like when you're jumping, when you're touching a wall, and how you're going to get clipped half the time there. How they took until Redditors or whatever found out that the boost bug was caused because of ragdolls and everything like that. Like they need people to actually crowdsource how to fix these problems and what is causing these problems. And it's like people are like, oh no, just be patient, be nice, and if you find the problem, you can help Valve fix it. It's like, why don't they have staff that are trying to fix these problems themselves? Like, that's what's so crazy to me. And I still feel like CS2 feels worse if you're playing with above, I mean, any ping disparity period. The Valve's, for whatever reason, I guess Valorant now has better netcode than Counter-Strike does. I didn't think we'd be in this world, but we are now, where it actually feels better to play Valorant with 60 ping than it does to play Counter-Strike with 60 ping. And also that problem is actually also carried over to Deadlock, by the way. They haven't fixed it for that game. It still feels kind of bad if you have higher ping, because so much of it is like frame perfect denying and everything like that, and all these pairing effects and everything. There's so many different reasons why. And I don't know why. They're just not great with netcode. Like, they just expect that everybody's going to play every game that they have with 15 ping or less across the globe, which is obviously not the case. So a lot to be upset about with how Valve is handling Counter-Strike right now. It's almost just like they said, you know, we worked really hard on Source 2 and Hammer++, and that's it, job done. And it's like, but you didn't fix anything. You just gave us tools that now we can tell you what the bugs are. And then they are like, we can't reproduce the bugs ourselves. So they just I guess they just don't exist right now. It's disappointing. And I feel like people have held out the faith, even the people that have been promoting CS2 and are saying, like, basically the counter culture to the LOBA, saying that this is the worst game of all time, have now actually started to crack a little bit, and they're like, guys, it's been a year. Like, this game still has some serious issues. CSGO still feels leaps and bounds better as a online experience, and there's no reason that it should take this long to fix this stuff. If the highest, like, Valve per employee is, I think they are the highest paid on average in all of America. Like, they are on average the highest paid per employee of all companies in America, and yet they are not fixing some basic issues, and they're relying on the community to find what it is that's causing them. It's simply incredibly disappointing.
Okay, as usual, there's like 50 things there, so I'll just pick the ones I found interesting. So I will say, first of all, I definitely agree. If people don't know, one of the biggest disputes me and Richard Lewis have is, because he just hated how long the games were, he is a true believer in MR12. Like, he's even fine with how it's implemented now, whereas I hate it, because I always tell people, yes, you did make the games shorter, but at the cost of the rounds I wanted to watch. Like, I always tell people, MR15 isn't just like you just took 3 rounds off. You basically took 3 good rounds off, if you think about how the flow of a game and how the economy worked. So the worst thing to me is, the problem I have with Counter-Strike wasn't too many good, really good gun round versus gun round. That's what I want to see in CS. You just took away, like, part of the game I want to see, kept the part I don't, and then the game is shorter, but as a result, it's an actual logical follow-on that since you've taken out the real part of the game results are going to be more variable. It's going to be a lot more randomized as to who wins and what wins you a game. I mean, the analogy I would give people, if they understand the sport, is it would be like if someone said, Maui, that an American football game lasts too long, so let's just make it so you have 3 downs instead of 4, right? The second you have 3 downs, if you understand American football, you would have way less experimental attempts at attack. Like, essentially, you would just do the most basic route ever. If it doesn't work, you'd have to go to your fallback route. Then you'd just have to punt on the 3rd down. Like, you would just make the game, it would shorter, but it'd be a way worse game. And by the way, similarly, you would have much worse teams with much worse quarterbacks win games randomly, even though they're not as good. So actually not giving IGLs, and also, by the way, throw this in as well, coaches, when you have less rounds in the game, there's less opportunity for the coach to choose when to take his time out and where to put it in and have an impact on the game. Like, as much as we're braving about Blade, he is a rare example of someone who has the opportunity to do that. So I think actually MR15, I've always hated the change from that to MR12, because if people don't know, the 2 main reasons in the first place 20 years ago that we went to MR15 was, 1, pistol rounds were having too much impact on winning the game. It was famously the case, Strobe didn't have OP pistols, so like winning the pistol really did win you 3 rounds. rounds at half. But if you won both pistols, the amount of times the team won the game was absurd. It's actually absurd. Then secondly, a follow-on from that, because how powerful the pistols was, it fucked up the economy when you had MR12. You had teams where it felt like the entire... Like, think about this. With the loss bonus, like... You can actually have like almost an entire half where you're just on the back foot of CT the entire game. And it's not cause, in this scenario, this is what you have to think about, guys. So essentially, because your player on your team on a pistol round hit a headshot more cleanly than mine, I have to play the next 2 or 3 rounds way behind you economically. Like, what's the incentive here? To just have a better pistol round player? Like, it's Counter-Strike. I'm supposed to win on like utility, positioning, team play, communication. These things go out the window when you make the game more randomized. So I definitely agree on that angle. Also, I'll just throw this out there. It's never mentioned, but are we all going to pretend that's not another reason why the AWP is way less relevant in Counter-Strike now? One, the cost of it, even though it costs the same money, the cost of what it's going to do to your economy is way higher. I think that's another reason, by the way, why the Zeroos of the world don't AWP all the time. They don't want to buy the AWP and die instantly after they're not using it for the whole map and go, shit, I just ruined the whole CT rifle and our entire defense there. Maybe I just take a rifle and just take an off angle. I think that's another reason people don't AWP as much. Then also, lastly, that's why when you add all this together, I think there are way more randomized games where it's almost becoming the meta now that people no longer try to build teams and build roles. And people just want fraggers now. Because if you have a bunch of crispy fraggers and you chuck them in an MR12 game on like fucking Ancient, then someone just pops off. Like, the joke now is, if you use my analogy, if you took out the 3 gun rounds, right? In the same way as I said, like someone like a Snappy or a Kid, you had more time to cook and condition you. It's even worse now. Instead of me having those 3 rounds where you might win one of them, but I have 2 to come back, or I have 1 to get the economy fixed. Now, you just get a nice 3K. That's it. The game's done. Because in one round, one player got a 3K randomly. Maybe your flash went off a millisecond too late and he peeked out and shot 3 people, like Malbs or something. That now decides the game. Like, bro, that's too much. One of the best things about Counter-Strike before was actually how much like space a game had to breathe and how you could really feel those. Like think about this, right? When do you ever get this now, by the way, guys? Remember even last year in CSGO, every time you had like Snappy against Carrigan or like cadiaN against insert whoever you want, right? Dude, it was like a fucking chess match of these like guys positioning and then coming back and then having a timeout. They're doing a mini run and then you break their economy. Like, the game had so many layers, it had so many chapters to it. It had like a pacing to it that unfolded beautifully. Now look, I'm with you. The games were too long. We had a million games that went like 4 hours. Some of that's like bomb timer. There's other things you can change with that, but this wasn't the fix for me. I agree. I think it made CS way worse, personally. Like, I understand, I agree. Casuals and then people who watch the game, but they don't care about tactics, enjoy it more because games are quicker. By the way, it's just people shooting each other. They might like that. I don't. What I actually love about Counter-Strike, it's why I'll always say, no matter what the NiKos of the world say, I love the overpass, because I'll tell you what, NiKo, you can't fuck around and accidentally win overpass, bro. You absolutely can fuck around and accidentally win an Ancient, a Mirage. These maps, that this happened before, bro. No one ever won against the best team in the world on overpass, an accidental overpass. Do you know what I mean? If you won that one, you probably scouted them well, called well, rotated well. One of the things I love about that map is it exaggerates and enhances all the best qualities of tactical teams. It's actually, and by the way, as you said, Ash, it's not that we took it out, but we brought in a new map. We took it out and we made like the fucking bozo blockhead version of CS, where it's just like, hey, press W and shoot people. Like, that's not CS. Like, look, that is an element of CS, but my analogy would be this. This is like if in MMA it was now only stand-up fighting and there was no wrestling. You might not like wrestling, but you understand it's an essential component to balance out the striking. In this analogy, we're only rewarding the strikers. So that's why, for me, 1, overpass should just be reworked and brought back. 2, this is why you've got to bring some of those up. This is why train is desperately needed. I'd even at this point, you know what? This is how bad it's gotten. I'd take cobblestone back at this point in time. At least it required actual strats, bro. At least you actually had to have protocols on CT. It actually had a meta game. Some of these dual maps, the problem really is this. On their own, all of them except Vertigo can stay, but they can't all stay at the same time. Pick like 2 of them and they can stay. We'll kick the other ones, because there's also too many maps that are too similar, by the way. Do we need Mirage and Ancient? You know what I mean? Do we need them both at the same time? Feels like you can just pick one, can't you? By the way, I'd even say I'm not a big Mirage hater, but if you want to kick Mirage, well, I can keep Ancient. That's okay. Don't mind that. Not a bad compromise, but I think everything's too skewed. I'm with you. I think it's too skewed at the moment.
Yeah, I think as well. Like, honestly, right now, if you said MR9 16K or MR12, I'd say, give me MR9, and I hate that as well. Like, if sometimes you get to overtime, you're like, thank God our economy's not ruined for us. So I have to worry about saving every round or this other crap, hoping to win 5 alive. I think also as well, like the thing you said about building, like putting fraggers in a team, like why not? You can't punish a fragger right now because if they swing and they do it right, the legs are pointing everywhere. The Pika's advantage, the AWP just dies anyway. Yes. No one's scared of AWPers right now. Like, literally, no one's scared. So everyone's just confident swinging. Oh, I swung into an AWP this round and he killed me. Well, next time he's probably not going to be there anyway, mathematically, and I'll just kill him if he is there. So I don't think people are punished by that either. I don't know. It's just. I don't know.
By the way, on that point as well, that's even another. I might do like a Substack piece about this. In the same way as I made that point, that I actually think the game is generally better when it's roughly CT sided, because then it requires more from the T side to get into the sights and win the game, which is what you want from Counter-Strike. I agree similarly, right? That's another thing that's mad. I actually want a game with no Pika's advantage. One of the best things about Counter-Strike, again, is it isn't Quake. It's not about having the crazy rail aim. One of the best things about CS is this. If I have someone like the aforementioned Messi, and he's just smarter and he did his homework, if he actually takes the right off angle, I want him to beat NiKo in that duel because he has the off angle, he has the edge on him, he has the drop on him. In that scenario, I want that millisecond to be enough to kill NiKo, not for NiKo's screen to see Messi slightly earlier to offset it. So now then NiKo just goes, ha, I have better aim and kills him. Like, that's the opposite of CS in my opinion. It's a version of CS, but for me, CS is like using your brain to beat the opponent. It's not just a boxing match. It's like boxing chess. That's what's genius about it. It's got both dynamics at the same time, and you don't want one or the other to get too out of whack, in my opinion. Your point, Maui, we move into that?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, there's so much. There's so much that you could
good.
We could go on for that for a long time, but okay, so the ugly point I have is that from what we've been fed in terms of, what is it, STY's Telegram at this point, and their results for the last...
I love the way we're just on the end of some fucked up clout gobbling human centipede, where we're at the back in English like, please, has anyone mistranslated a Telegram message? I need those Telegram messages. Like, and it's half of it's just shite as well. Like, it's not even true half the time. We're all just here like, oh my God, have you read the newspaper? AKA CISCS _ again.
I know.
What even is this? Like, what have I been reduced to?
I know. But
apparently everything's happening on Telegram, and I'm just here on WhatsApp like a boomer. Great, brilliant.
No, we're just here on Twitter. We're just watching the official broadcast.
No, because the worst thing is now we became the boomer, Maui. We're the people who think we're sending someone a new Instagram, but it's just a TikTok refried from 2 weeks ago. But we're a boomer, so we're on Instagram, so we're getting it from an Instagram Reels instead. Is the analogy?
You actually look in the corner closely enough, and it is a TikTok with a watermark right there. Yeah, exactly. It's just too much. It's too much. Yeah, but I mean, I feel like so my ugly point is just it's the ENCE collapse that we are witnessing. The fact that they didn't make it to the RMR even through the closed qualifier. The fact that they are with Glaive. If you look at total matches that they've won or the maps that they've won since he's joined with the top 30 filter. I'm not even doing online LAN. Okay. They've won 36.6% of maps with Glaive. Like this is since he joined the team. Like
this is even when it was the original lineup doing the early success with the Polish team.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. 36.6%. Even this was with the remnants of like nerds and Modern and everything like that.
Yeah, they played the Elisa tournament with those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He has they've won less than 40% of maps when you have a top 30 filter on. Like, and even without the top 30 filter on, it's 40.8%. Like, it doesn't really get that much better. So it has been really bad to watch this ENCE with Glaive, and I feel like there's a little bit of empathy that I have for Glaive. Like, his team has changed multiple times. The very beginning, Modern, Nerds, I felt like Sunpius, all of them probably knew at that point, or they had a very good idea that they were going to be going elsewhere. Yes. So they probably didn't just dive headfirst into the Glaive structure, Glaive system. But then he got that Polish roster with Deha, with Kylar, Goofy, all of them, Hades, and they had that single Katowice run. They had one run that was decent, and they also made it to the major. But they bombed out of that major terribly badly, and then but since then they've had to now try to make this work with SDY, with Battye, and it's just been disaster after disaster. They're right now on a 5-series losing streak. If you even look at top 30 teams, like they're barely winning versus everybody. Sure, they might take a map off them here and there at best, but the last top team they've beaten has been Fnatic, and that was in May. The last BO3 that they won with the top 30 filter was Fnatic in May. Like, this team is not beating anybody at this point. They are strictly speaking just all worse than like any team that's... I don't know a single partner team that's actually worse than them right now. Like, that's where I'm at right now. I don't know any partner teams that are performing worse than them day to day, and I feel like this team right now, it's just... it just feels bad because ENCE were before such a roster that was it was almost like how we're talking about MOUZ today. Like a team that looked like they were doing everything right. They were finding all these gems in the rough. That way they were or the diamonds in the rough. That way the Alexi lineup was obviously very good. It had its hiccup. I mean, it had some problems after they kicked Alexi, but then they rebuilt with Snappy. They started punching above their weight once again. And I feel like this rebuild has just been disastrous. And at this point, I feel like I was a little bit concerned when everybody was leaving Glaive and they weren't winning. They had a horrible 5v4 percentage with him at the helm. And at this point, it's just like the one consistent factor with this team has just been Glaive now. Like this team has just been like Glaive has unfortunately not regained his bearings in Tier 1 Counter-Strike as an in-game leader. And if we're going to judge, if we're so frequently going to forgive IGLs for having a bad rating, but you have a good amount of victories, like you have an above 50% map win percentage, well, then you have to say the same thing when you're on the losing end here. And I know Glaive's story. I know he's a legend. And I feel like right now, this is unfortunately hurting his legacy quite a bit as a leader, because it's clear that where cadiaN gets to rise up in that GOAT in-game leader discussion is because he's done it with multiple rosters. Now all we're seeing is that there is only proof that Glaive has done it with one 4-man core. And now if you throw him with a random assembly of other players, he doesn't have that in him right now. Whereas cadiaN has continued to innovate with different pieces again and again and again, and he's been the consistent factor in success. It's almost like Glaive has now shown that he's only worked in a perfect system where everybody was contributing in a very specific fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I know I have a little bit of insight about this, and I'm not going to say that anyone's wrong or right, but I know that, I think we all know that ENCE have been like fantastic for the last few years, right? They've been making a lot of good decisions. And I think what's happened in this team from a little bit of behind the scenes sort of stuff is that I think that Glaive and cadiaN have not got along at all. They've not shared the same ideologies whatsoever. I'm not saying that one's right and one's wrong, but when you're in a team, if these two people in the team are not getting along, this is like your parents fighting. You know, you're not going to be motivated to go and do your homework and everything like this. It's like the worst thing possible. You need to be a rock in the team. This combination, I've seen it like firsthand as well when I've had it in my teams. When the disagreements are there and you can't agree on anything, you're not getting the best out of anyone. You're literally not getting the best out of anyone. You come out of every game with the wrong different conclusions all the time, and you can't put your finger on anything. You don't feel like you have each other's backs. The players don't feel like they understand what's going on with the system, who they're making mistakes for, who should they be following, who should they not be listening to. And it seems like cadiaN, who's a very, very good coach, and Glaive was obviously being an outstanding game leader, one of the best of all time. Sometimes they just don't match. And I think when you're taking a coach, like we said earlier in the show, you don't know what you're getting with a coach because none of us are out there. None of the tournaments care about us. Nobody gets interviewed. I think we came final in a major, and I've had like two people ask me about it ever since then. Like, no one gives a shit. So obviously no one knows about it. And then when you take a chance on a coach, you go, who was the best tier 1 pro who's played or coached at the tier 1 level before? And that's why the same coaches are always at the top. That's the biggest crime I ever committed as a coach, is that I wasn't a tier 1 player. So I'll never probably get a chance like that to go at that level. And they've just had a combination that didn't work. And I think maybe Glaive isn't working, but give him a chance of another coach who maybe trusts him, and you probably see someone actually buying into his ideas. And maybe now this is the chance where you go, okay, now I can properly judge, is the last year down mostly to Glaive or the coach? But I think now this is when it's like this, everyone loses out. Everyone loses out because they're not on the same page and they can't agree with each other for cultural reasons or whatever. And now I can't remember who the coach is who they signed the other day. Maybe now this will be something that changes for them, and maybe they get the roster in that makes more sense and more balanced. I don't know if having 4 Polish people and a Danish person's helping dynamics at all. I would anticipate.
Oh, it was NKJ, the German guy. NKJ was who they signed.
Yeah, NKJ. I don't really know anything
guy.
about him.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about him really. So I guess now we're probably going to see more of Glaive's ideas. Obviously, they've sided with Glaive over cadiaN for whatever reasons. And at the end of the day, what do you do as an organization? You can't tell. We're sat here talking about when we don't know as well, right? They're sat there. This exact same picture, they're just taking a risk and they go, Glaive experience, we're going to back you on this one. I don't think cadiaN's probably done anything wrong. It just doesn't work together. And when it doesn't work together, nothing's in sync. That's probably what's happened.
By the way, 2 things. One, I actually have another joke I forgot to make earlier, so I'll make it anyway, which was when you were describing about that whole thing, which obviously they just did it on Reddit the other day, didn't they, where it was like they were comparing in CSGO the animation time of like which frame it appears on when you shoot the guy versus CS2. That was one of those moments that made me realise that's how much I actually agree that CS2 is whack. Bro, we're like fucking mad conspiracy people, like watching frame by frame the Zapruder clip. Like, look, it's the Secret Service guy in the front. Look, go on frame 17. Look, what are we doing here? Like, because that's like, we're watching like, yeah, look on frame 7, like, can't we just fix the game? Just make the game feel good again. What the fuck are you talking about? How deep are we going to go? So there's that. That just shows what we've been reduced to now, guys, because we know something's wrong, and Valve's just gaslighting us. Nah, it's pretty much the same, isn't it? I think we ported a lot of it over, like, whatever. Anyway, that's one thing. I always love when the game dev gaslights me about the problems in the game that he created. But then on this actual topic of events, right, actually what's funny is people are going to think, this is where people have always been wrong. If you actually asked me right now, I probably would still say glaive's the GOAT CSGO IGL. Like, I built the case for cadiaN, I think, because my problem with this was I always thought it should be a conversation. I thought it's like when people, whoever they're a fan of Ronaldo or Messi, go, and the other one isn't even close. It's like, the whole point is they're obviously really close, you moron. They're both insanely good. And actually, the discussion of which do you prefer is a really great discussion, isn't it? So for me, it always should have been like that with Glaive and cadiaN, especially because they took these different routes. So I'm not now going to take this moment to go, Glaive was proven to be a fraud the whole time. One, he couldn't be a fraud. The things he did, it's impossible to accomplish as a fraud. Now, you might want to go the angle Maui did there of like, but maybe it only worked with like Danish people, or maybe it needed very specific players. Look, we can't know that because we can't A/B test it. I actually think the biggest sad thing entirely about Glaive's career is what you alluded to there, which is that when he joined this team, we thought we were going to get the chance to A/B test. We thought, right, perfect. He's going to take Snappy's old lineup, and we're going to see, after seeing what Snappy just did with it, maybe Glaive can do as well, which already would prove he's really good, or maybe he'll be even better, and we'll be like, he is my GOAT. You know what I mean? Like, that would have, by the way, think about how that would have kickstarted the whole discussion of him and cadiaN again in a different way if now he had success with an international team. That would have been an awesome narrative, right? The problem was, as we said, one, even the little time he played with that lineup, I actually do know behind the scenes, Ash, you are right. Those players already knew. Some of, if not all of us, are going either to Heroic or Falcons, and we're definitely not staying with Glaive. And luckily, though, I know also that Glaive came in knowing that was possible. He didn't really think he joined and he got Snappy's team and like he got ripped out under his last second rug pulled. So it's not quite like that, but I will say the sad part is, I actually would like to see that experiment run for real. I would actually like to see him have a real, actual, like a MOUZ type roster, but with Glaive instead of shooting. I want to see that happen so I can actually see whether Glaive's good or not. Because I will say the eye test looks bad. Like, this isn't like when Elexi and Snappy run like that good teams, but you could see like they're doing a pretty good job still though. But I'll say, if I'm going to defend Elexi B for all those years with whack rosters, bro, if you look at this roster right now, Goofy, Kyler, SDY and Poddy, if you give those to Elexi and the orcs called OG, wouldn't we all just be flaming the fuck out of OG right now and going, what's he supposed to do? Who's he supposed to win the major with? You know, we'd all say that, right? But for some weird reason, because ENCE has had that track record of getting undervalued players and being good, everyone's acting like it's Glaive and not these players. Like, I'm just going to say, I also did hear that if you had to gun to your head, say who actually did the scouting at ENCE, it was Snappy. It wasn't Saw and it wasn't the ENCE org, I've heard. I've heard it was Snappy. So I will say, one, you're not going to get those players again. You're not going to find the Maddens and those are the guys that you find and pick up some pious and that. Like, people have tried just doing the random pick a tier 2 player up. It doesn't work. They were the right tier 2 players to pick up that were fucking ready to be good already. So I already do think you haven't given him a good enough lineup here. I definitely agree on that one, by the way. This is why I always say cadiaN ruined international Counter-Strike, because he made people think you can really give someone 4 different nationalities and it just works because you're good. Like, bro, that's actually amazing that he made that work. And if you look at this, the idea you're going to take the most Danish IGL ever, give him a bunch of Polish players and a Polish coach and go, shouldn't be any problems there. Like, bro, there's no connection whatsoever. They don't even vaguely have the same way of looking at CS or thinking about CS. And I often think, by the way, what a mad angle that is, bearing in mind all the blame. This is the downside, actually, of the fact that the coach never gets to blame Ash. No one is going, but it's probably bloody Cuban. In fact, people even forget Cuban just got fired and replaced. They just go, Glaive sucks, obviously. But I'll just add this as well. If I'm going to bring Glaive over, bro, the idea that the players are all the nationality of the coach, not my nationality. Well, I'm already at a disadvantage here, aren't I? Like, and also, he could literally just speak to them in Polish over there. I don't even know what they're talking about. I'm not saying that's some sinister thing. I'm just throwing it in there. That's another thing that makes you think, like, we're not really all part of the same group, are we? So, fuck knows what's going on with that. Then also, you've got the angle that because you're ENCE, you only got by on Mega Scouting. I'll say this for the millionth time. Can anyone tell me the time ENCE signed a really big player? I'll be waiting forever, mate. Never happened. So since ENCE isn't a team that goes out in the transfer market and spends millions, also, how are you supposed to change the morale? How am I ever supposed to believe this lineup's going to get better? Or even better, when I hear stories like, oh, blame F's out there. Oh, JK, well, we're not getting them. I already know that. That ship sailed, mate. We're not signing them and giving them a 20k a month salary. Like, it's not even on the table, is it? So I also think what a bomber this whole environment must be. Like, I actually think the sad thing is, I just hope, essentially, it could be in this lineup. I just hope they give Glaive one real lineup. Give him one lineup of actual... By the way, give him people like Slen. Give him someone like that who can actually do it. And then, obviously, not in this literal case. That's just someone like that. But obviously, I want to actually see one of... Then, by the way, after that, if it doesn't work, okay, we can fucking take him behind the woodshed and go, it's all right, Glaive, look up there, mate. Remember, we'll have the rabbits, bro, and then we'll just fucking, retire him as it goes. We can also do that too. Right, there you go. That's the end of that rant. Right, I have got one last point, and it's the final ugly point. And despite the fact Ash tried to cut out the fucking legs of my whole point before I even made it, I'm going to make it anyway. It's about MOUZ Sports, Ash, over the last sort of 3 weeks, mate. And even though you tried to build that whole, that's okay, MOUZ, don't worry. It's just the group state. No, I'm just going to say this right now. I looked it up. While we were talking, I looked this up. So from the beginning of 2024 to the end of IEM Cologne, so remember that's like every tournament MOUZ played except Bet Boom before this and now EPL. So for all those tournaments, MOUZ had lost 7 best of 3s. In the last 18 days, they've lost 5 best of 3s. Like, and by the way, when I say 5 best of 3s, if you go back to where they were losing to like FaZe Clan, like the best teams in the world. Now they're losing to anyone who enters the server. Like, it's fucking bonkers. By the way, I'll even forgive that Eternal Fire loss at BetBoom. Eternal Fire aren't total bombs. Bro, now you are losing to absolutely anyone. Like, in this EPL, I actually feel like by the end, almost any team that matched MOUZ was like, we got to have a chance at least, bro. Like, did you see the last lineup? And the reason why I bring this up as an ugly point, I don't actually put it as a bad Ash. I'm actually with you. I think, if anything, because of how exceptional they've been the whole year and how good the lineup is, I'm almost certain this team will bounce back. In fact, obviously at the time of recording this, I'm risking it by saying this, but if they'd been in the playoffs of now, I think they turn around in the bloody playoffs. Like, they're still like a good enough team that, like, I expect them to wake up one day and just be the team they were. But that's what kills me so much about how bad it is, because I actually think on paper this team is fantastic. Like, the players, there's not a single bad player in there. Every player's good at their role. The fragging distribution is mental. It's actually one of the best I've ever seen in Counter-Strike. Their map pool is really good. Like, if people don't know, they aren't even a team that tries to flex vertigo, but they can punish pick it into people who are really good on it and beat them on it. Like, this team's actually, like, no joke. Like, so it's actually just, I'd try to put it as ugly. I think this is one of the ugliest, like, slides I've seen in a fucking while. And even if they course correct, I also think, by the way, as a last point, the reason it's so ugly is because it had to come at Bet Boom and EPL. If this slide happened at, like, IEM Rio, all the usual narratives would apply. Maybe it was the stage, maybe the pressure. The problem is, because they had the whole rep of, like, they murk everyone when there's no pressure and it's only the big stage gets to them. That's, like, undercut that narrative too, because now they've lost to a bunch of nobodies when it didn't matter in random studios in the middle of nowhere with 2.5 Maltese people watching and a dog, a Maltese dog. There's a joke there, whatever. It wasn't that great. Listen, it's getting late, boys.
I have a Maltese dog, so it was a good one.
Okay, he appreciated it anyway. He was nodding. So yeah, that's my point. It's MOUZ. MOUZ is the ugly point. It has to be. Come on.
Okay, I just... The only thing I hope with MOUZ is I hope they don't panic and they just go back to basics and they just talk about it. But I worry as well. So I hope this isn't just a sign that they've sold someone and they've lost motivation and they're down on each other. This is like always a worry with someone like MOUZ, right? The players are really sought after. Like I said, you build a dream team, you build it with half of these players. I hope they're going to stick with what they have. Everyone does an amazing job, and I think they'll just go back to basics. I know what Stu is like. He'll go and figure out the problem. I'm sure Cyclone is always going to be great with that, and they'll dumb it down and figure out what it is, and they'll go back to basics. I genuinely think that they were so focused on not choking in the playoffs that they kind of took the foot off the pedal, lost sight of what they should be focused on, just get there. And this will generally be a team. If they stay together, they will do exactly what Astralis did, won a semi-final and finally got there. They'll just start winning tournaments.
I think it's possible.
As soon as they do it. They're just having the moment. You can tell that it's just mental at the moment. Everything's mental. We all know they're one of the best teams in the world.
Yes.
It's just on the stage. They're just struggling, and it will happen. So I just don't want them to panic. Like I said, I think randomness in the game is just so excusable right now, and they're just down. I just hope they haven't sold someone. I hope they haven't benched someone.
I hadn't even thought of that angle, but you are right. That's the one thing we always forget about with MOUZ, because they're like right there in every sense on your screen. We do forget they're mega inexperienced. So like, actually, imagine if that was real, Maui. Imagine if like the joke would be like right before they played Eternal Fire in the lower bracket of Bet Boom, like, Yimfat was like, hey guys, just to let you know, I will be in Falcons next year. Like, then they're just like, oh well, fuck it. And then like everyone's mental just cracks instantly. Like, that's not implausible. Like, that's how CS is, to be fair. Like, could be. What do you think, Maui? What do you think about the MOUZ angle?
So yeah, I've been watching MOUZ really closely because they were playing. I mean, I watched probably 3 or 4 of their EPL games. The only one I didn't watch actually, I think, was the Rooster one, and I remember
they
that
even lost the map there, bro, which is mental.
I know. I probably should have watched it actually, because then I would have seen what's going on even more so. But they had one of those sections for ESL sponsored like comms moments, and it was actually pretty negative. It was actually pretty surprising. I think it was when they were playing against Complexity.
What sort of stuff were they saying?
Kind of telling off Brolin for like having 2020 hindsight or not communicating enough in the moment, and it was pretty obvious that they were definitely not feeling each other the way that they had that honeymoon towards the end of last year. And I want to say like So Blast like 2 years ago brought Nifty on for I think a showdown. And he was saying some ridiculous stuff on the desk. He said some absolutely absurd things. And one thing that he said is that when EG was on their huge loss streak, something that Nifty said is that, you know, if I was Evil Geniuses, and they came in last place by the way, he said I think if I were on Evil Geniuses, I would want to take a retreat and just have everybody relax, take a big break, and then try to come back and just
wait a minute, Nifty, who was that? Pull off the whip. It was Mind Body Esports all along. What the fuck? Oh, it was you all along. I would have gotten away with it.
And at the moment, I thought that line was. I thought that line was absolutely ridiculous because EG was on a string of losing. I think the last thing they needed to do was practice less at that point. But if I'm MOUZ, I actually would take Nifty's advice. I would actually take, because I can tell that the way that they're talking right now, because they played this during the broadcast, they're not in sync right now. They aren't trading as well as they were earlier in the year. I made the claim earlier that if this team leveled up just like 5% more, they're the closest team in my eyes to actually to finding an era. Like, I really think that the way that they play, the way that they trade off of each other, the way that Shuhei's able to mid-round and control everybody, it's been some of the best CS I've seen this year, with the only other teams that I think have matched it in terms of quality team play have been Na'Vi and lately Vitality, actually. So if I'm actually taking any team to just level up again, it's that unfortunately MOUZ were so close to actually reaching the summit that they instead regressed 5%, and now that 5% down, now a lot of things fall apart very quickly for themselves. And if they're able to regain that what they had before, play off of each other a little bit better, I have no doubt that they can play as well again, because it's not like individuals to me are just playing well beneath what they're supposed to. Like, Brolin had a bad start to EPL, but by the end of EPL, I didn't necessarily feel like, oh wow, I'm like super disappointed with anybody on the team right now. It's just that they had one bad start, and like, I still believe in Exertion. Like, I think Exertion's one of the top 10 players this year. I think Torzi's been super underrated for this year, and he's a top 20 player for me. Yimpat, he had a 1.04 rating at EPL. Come on, like, we don't even think that's going to keep up. Like, this guy's insane. This guy's one of the best anchors in the world right now. I still believe that. And Brolin, yeah, he had a bad start, and that seems to be the one thing right now that seems to be irking this team, is that Brolin right now, I don't know if it's mindset, I don't know if it's level of communication, just the energy that he's bringing to the team. It's something that Exertion literally called out. And so if they're able to just kind of make sure that he can just rewrite the ship, then I feel like this team's going to be fine. And yes, there is a bit of concern right now. Losing to Eternal Fire for your tournament life at BetBoom was a shock to all of us. And also losing to, they lost to M80, they lost to Complexity twice. Like, come on, I like Complexity a lot, but Complexity's not supposed to beat you twice. Even if they just beat MOUZ at EPL in the playoffs, like, I don't think that they're better than them enough that they should be beating them 2 times in a row, 2-0ing them on the second time. Like, that's
even more wild, dude. They 4-0'd them, exactly. 4-0'd them.
4-0'd them, and it's like, Complexity, you're the king of just like winning the first map and losing the last.
Oh no, they're
2,
ridiculous.
You know?
Yeah, they're a 3-map team usually. Yeah.
Yeah, they're usually the team that gets in their own head about being ahead. Like, MOUZ need to do something, because I'm not saying that to like raise the alarm bells yet, but you definitely need to address that there is an elephant in the room, and I feel like it is Brolin's energy from what I've heard through the comms.
Okay. I will say, by the way, as a last humorous note, bro, ESL has the most cursed skits ever, Maui. You know, I made the joke earlier that right before that Dallas where like Ziwu shit the bed, they did that like Ziwu is a fraud skit. They released the one of Play Like Torji on the day they got fucking eliminated. What?
Yeah.
Bro, that could look. I know it's not your fault because, by the way, I even feel bad for ESL, believe it or not, in this case, because you think Ziwu, one of the most reliable players of all time, MOUZ, well, they're really good. They're going to be in our giant EPL with 1 billion playoff teams. Like when you make this skit, you never think that the worst case scenario is like that player actually is almost getting donked on by your skit.
No,
but because the posting time's so insane, bro.
I'm sure that they were trying to hold on to that skit until MOUZ were in the playoffs. They don't usually want to release a skit like that until the playoffs, so there's more eyeballs. But they were like, "Holy shit, MOUZ is in an elimination game in the group stage. Guess we got to run it, boys." Okay.
Because by the way, I'm not joking. When I initially saw that tweet from like Cole's team of like that screenshot of play like Torji, I hadn't seen the skit, so I thought, "Oh, that's genius. They've mocked it up like they did."
Yeah.
And then I realized, well, it was a real thing. You actually did a real skit like that right before they got back down. Like, holy shit! Like,
it was a good skit too. Torzi actually acted.
He did.
The way Torzi's cadence in it was so unlike himself.
It was good.
He actually made it like he was giving a tutorial. It was good.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to if someone out of Rings of Power who's a hobbit just became an AWPer, which is what he normally looks like. So leave it there.